Chapter 350. Ha 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 ha. Even though I don't understand, I still want to laugh at you. Yin Zhuge replied to Lu Cheng's grievance about the pork ribs. Lu Cheng tilted his head and replied with an emoji of biting a handkerchief. I came here with such high hopes and expectations, but you… Alright. Let's go to the supermarket and buy the best ones. Yin Zhuge replied with a snickering emoji. Why do I feel like you're still gloating? Lu Cheng replied with an emoji of touching his chin. Don't mind the details. Yin Zhuge replied with an emoji of a flash of light in her eyes. Just like that, Lu Cheng flirted with Quan QQ while chatting with his father, Lu Jisheng. He also helped his mother, Qi Fang, while waiting for dinner to come. When it was almost 7 o'clock, Lu Cheng picked up a piece of pork rib, dipped it in sauce, and chewed it off with his excellent teeth. What a delicious pork rib. Why did Mom dislike it? Lu Jisheng thought of something. He put down his chopsticks and took a sip of wine. Cheng, you may have to go back to your hometown to worship your ancestors in a few days. Go back to your hometown to worship your ancestors. Lu Cheng was confused. What did he mean by going back to his hometown? Weren't Grandpa's parents buried in the Zhaoyushan cemetery in the north of the city? Didn't he sweep the graves during the summer vacation? Lu Jisheng looked at his son's expression and chuckled. Go back to your hometown to worship your ancestors? You haven't been there before. It's in Qingfu. Lining City, Qingfu County. Lu Cheng suddenly understood. Oh, Grandpa's hometown. He didn't think of it as his hometown at all. He was born in Xiaoshan and grew up in Xiaoshan. He spent his first 18 years in Xiaoshan. Xiaoshan was his real and spiritual hometown. The Lu family was not native to Xiaoshan. Lu Debong was born in Qingfu County, Lining City, next door. When he was 20 years old, he came to the factory in Xiaoshan City to recruit workers. From then on, he settled down and started a family. Later, he even brought his parents here. By the time Lu Cheng was born, his great-grandparents had passed away and were buried in the local area. He rarely visited his relatives and neighbors in Qingfu. Lu Debong had gone back to Qingfu twice in the years before and after his retirement. Later, when he got older, he didn't want to travel anymore. That's right. Your grandfather has been dreaming about his childhood a few times recently. He feels like his ancestors are reminding him that it's time to pay his respects. Haha, homesickness. Besides, you're successful now. He definitely wants to pay his respects. Lu Jisheng shook his chopsticks. If I don't settle down in Xiaoshan in the future, will I often remember and dream of this place when I'm old? Lu Cheng was touched by her words and asked himself this question. He felt that the answer was yes, unless he could cut off his entire childhood and most of his teenage years. He could forget those difficult but definitely beautiful times. But now, even if he went out to study for half a year, he would often miss home in Xiaoshan. Well, I really don't have any impression of Qingfu. I'll just take it as a 2-day trip with my grandparents. Lu Cheng shook his head and smiled. He was completely in the dark about his relatives and the situation over there. Qi Fang ate a piece of winter melon and sneered. Your dad doesn't have any impression of it either. He only went back 4 or 5 times. The last time he went back was not long after we got married. Yeah, I only remember there was a river and a grave mountain. When I gave birth to you, I said I would take you back. But I forgot when I was busy. Lu Jisheng chuckled. I heard that they are talking about revising the genealogy. Every family has to pay a lot of money. If they don't pay, they won't let them enter the genealogy. Haha, what kind of society are we living in now? What does it matter if we don't enter the genealogy? He just wants to cheat money. Qi Fang rambled on. Well, the old people really like that. Lu Jisheng didn't care much. So many years had passed since he didn't have a genealogy. Lu Cheng listened to them like he was listening to gossip. He planned to search for food or specialties in Qingfu and bring some for his little fairy. If he couldn't, he would try it and take her for a trip. Thinking of this, he was curious about his grandfather's hometown. Lu Cheng ate a mouthful of rice and wondered. Is the whole family going? There are so many people. It will be troublesome to buy tickets. It should be the whole family. Just rent a few cars and the driver's food and accommodation. Lu Jisheng said slowly. It was obvious that the Lu family had discussed it several times. Okay then. Lu Cheng was relieved and didn't worry about it anymore. At that time, he would just be an accompanying member of the younger generation. He just needed to eat and drink and worship the ancestors. There was no need to worry. After talking about the ancestral worship for a while, Lu Jisheng's phone vibrated several times. He picked it up and said to Qi Fong with a smile, "Old Zhao asked us to have tea and play cards this weekend." Okay. Qi Fong agreed readily. She looked up at Lu Cheng and said, "Your Uncle Zhao has been saying that the two families should get together. Since you are on holiday, why don't you come with us this weekend?" Uncle Zhao? Lu Cheng was a little confused. Who is this? Why can't I remember him? Lu Jisheng took a sip of wine and said with a smile, "Haven't you met him? Zhao Zijuan, your dad's childhood friend. His daughter and your brother went on a blind date. Hey, the blind date didn't work out, but we are friends again." Oh him. Lu Cheng thought of the scene when he met Mr. and Mrs. Zhao at Director Xing's house. He didn't know what to say, so he just smiled and said, "It depends. Maybe something will happen. After all, I am the coach of the Xiushan preliminaries team. It's winter vacation. What are you busy with?" Qi Fong nagged. "By the way, Fatty Guo also wants to invite us as guests." Humph, why didn't I see him so enthusiastic before? He changed his attitude after seeing you win the youth tournament. Guomin, Lu Jisheng's big boss. That's not it. Lu Cheng criticized his mother's judgment. Guomin should have started to change after he recognized him. Hey, Cheng, Fatty Guo always said something about you protecting him. What's the situation? Lu Jisheng frowned and asked. Back then, there was a fugitive who fled to Xiushan. Because of my master, I was more familiar with the police, so I was asked to help out. I stayed overnight at the Guo family's house. Lu Cheng gave a brief explanation. As expected, Lu Jisheng and Qi Fong didn't think there was anything wrong with it. They both thought that Fatty Guo was really afraid of death, and that their son's social circle was getting wider and wider. After dinner, Lu Cheng shared all these things with Yanjika. The two of them excitedly discussed the specialties and delicacies of Qingfu Mansion, and the great ancestors of Qingfu Mansion. Unfortunately, Lu Cheng's family was ordinary and had no illustrious past. However, there was an outstanding person in this generation, the provincial youth tournament champion Lu Cheng. After chatting for a while, Lu Cheng suddenly received a message from Jiang Fei. Cheng, I have something to ask you. Fatty Jiang sent an, I admire you the most emoji. What is it? Aren't you coming back the day after tomorrow? Lu Cheng asked. Fatty Jiang smiled embarrassedly and said, Yes. I just want to ask you what's so fun in Xiushan. I have a few classmates coming over to play for 2 days. Lu Cheng laughed and said in the tone of Little Ming, You are not from Xiushan? Why are you asking me? Hee, I know where the good food is. I like to stay at home. You and Yanjika often go out, so you definitely know where the fun places are. Jiang Fei said shamelessly. Lu Cheng snickered and said, I know. We often go to one place. Where? Jiang Fei asked. Lu Cheng sent an evil smile and said, The library. The place we go the most when we are dating. Fatty Jiang was speechless and said, I take you to the library for a trip? Haha. Lu Cheng was very happy to tease him and said jokingly, There are girls in your classmates, right? Otherwise, why are you so serious? Fatty Jiang scratched his head and said, Yes, there are. One of them brought his girlfriend, and his girlfriend brought her best friend. It's like a trip. It's not because he likes her best friend, but because he wants to know more girls. Maybe he will be introduced to his girlfriend. Not bad, very practical. Lu Cheng smiled and joked. Then take them to Xiushan scenic spots. Climb the mountains, visit the temples and Taoist temples. When you come back, show them your specialty and take them to eat and drink. That's it. Jiang Fei asked for confirmation. It's only 2 days. What else do you want? Lu Cheng laughed and said, They are probably here for the scenic spots. That's true. Jiang Fei finally made up his mind. The next morning, Lu Cheng and Yanjika finished their morning exercises and ate breakfast that they had missed for a long time. Because Yanjika had family activities, they parted at the entrance of her neighborhood at 8:30 a.m. Back home, Lu Cheng said that he would accompany his mother to do some decorations to fulfill his filial piety. Unfortunately, there was no one in the house. Those who worked had gone to work, and those who were busy had gone to work. I'm the only one who has nothing to do. Lu Cheng laughed at himself. After thinking for a while, he changed his clothes, took the key, the medicine soup and other things, and went to Gushan Martial Arts School. He planned to use the strength training gymnasium and the venue to continue his training. In addition, he heard from Qin Rui that the Xioshan preliminaries team would have a friendly competition with the Tiangao City preliminaries team in the morning in Gushan Martial Arts School to prepare for the preliminaries after the new year. He could take this opportunity to watch. The entrance of Gushan Martial Arts School was very quiet. The girls at the front desk were looking inside, as if they were expecting something. Lu Cheng didn't greet them and walked in slowly. He saw that several partitions had been removed and a standard competition field was set up in the middle. The disciples of the martial arts school and other spectators sat cross-legged around it, whispering to each other as they watched the fight. Lu Cheng bent down and casually patted someone's shoulder, asking him to squeeze to the side to make room for him. That person turned his head and looked at him. At first he was at a loss, but then he showed a look of surprise. Lu Cheng didn't know who he was. He smiled and put a finger to his lips, telling him not to be excited and not to make a sound. Chapter 351. Seeing Lu Cheng's action, the excited and pleasantly surprised person immediately shut his mouth and swallowed the word brother. He nodded repeatedly to show that he understood, and moved to the side to make space for Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng greeted him with a smile, took a step forward, and smoothly sat down cross-legged. He looked at the field and happened to see Qin Rui fighting with a fighter of professional ninth pin. Crisp and muffled sounds echoed from time to time. "Brother Lu, when did you come back?" The person next to him asked in a low voice, as if he was doing something secretive. Lu Cheng turned his head and looked at the ordinary-looking person, but he couldn't remember who he was. He could only smile and say, "I just arrived yesterday. I wanted to borrow the strength training gym. There was a competition, so I thought I'd take a look." He lifted the bag in his hand as proof. Oh. The person next to Qin Haodong was stunned. Looking at the confrontation in the field, he said with obvious envy, "Senior brother Qin's strength has improved so fast after he succeeded in meditation. In such a short time, his strength is already close to that of a professional ninth pin. His body condition is very good. If he can make up for the shortcoming of visualization, he'll definitely improve quickly." Lu Cheng smiled with satisfaction. Since July, when he had given pointers and corrected Qin Rui's meditative state, after 4 months of training and repeated victories over anxiety and frustration, he had finally succeeded in meditating, crossing a very important threshold and obstacle on the path of martial arts. When visualization could be used in actual combat, with his 1.9 meters thick body, long arms and legs, and outstanding strength, it would be relatively easy for him to become a professional ninth pin. The person next to him nodded and said with a flattering smile, "Senior brother Qin can't be compared to you. Will you work part-time in the martial arts club this time?" I want to book a time for personal instruction." If it was yesterday morning, Lu Cheng might have agreed. But now he just smiled and said, "There are too many things to do during the winter vacation. I don't have time for part-time work. If you have any questions, it's better to ask Qin Rui directly. If you can't solve it, I'll come over when I'm free after training. There's no need to make it so formal." Last night, he sent his opinion on the modification of the contract to Wu Qingui, and waited for him to confirm it when he came back from his business trip. Good. The person beside him nodded happily. He also knew that it was impossible for Lu Cheng, who had entered the 6th pin, to work part-time in the martial arts club. Martial artists who were not rich could not afford to be taught by masters of this level alone. In the center of the field, Qin Rui was fully displaying his strength. He was locked in a battle with the warrior with a mustache. The referee was an old man with gray hair and deep wrinkles. He should be a senior who retired to Xioshan. The scenery in Xioshan was beautiful, and the air quality was good. Many local martial artists would come back from time to time to stay for a while when they were old. Amidst the crisp sound, Qin Rui seized an opportunity. Relying on the advantage of his figure, he barely won a move against his opponent. Great! Lu Cheng applauded and cheered, just like the other disciples and students of the martial arts club. This was what the so-called melon-eating crowd was like. Yes, Qin Rui's improvement was indeed great, worthy of applause. Qin Rui shook his fist with satisfaction, and then saluted to his supporters. He walked to the other side and sat beside Monk Wenguang, accepting his comments and guidance in a low voice. The next round was between Jiang Shuiyan from Tiangao City and Zhou Jingyao from Xiushan. Both of them were close to the level of professional ninth pin. Once again, they were evenly matched. At the climax of the battle, Jiang Shuiyan suddenly broke out and made a series of fierce and smooth attacks. She forced Zhou Jingyao to the edge and won the match. Great! Lu Qing applauded again. She was able to perfectly combine fierce and smooth attacks with the control of her body refining state. It was enough to show that she had a good foundation in martial arts. This time, his cheers were no longer as silent as before. Instead, they were abruptly interrupted by the quiet and regretful reaction of the supporters of the martial arts club. His voice clearly echoed around the venue, attracting the attention of many people. Jiang Shuiyan was the first to look over. She was surprised that the audience of Xiushan City would applaud for her. The audience here was not the usual kind. They were either disciples and students of the martial arts club or friends and relatives of the contestants. They were the kind of people who would definitely side with their friends and relatives. It was very difficult for them to cheer for the opponent. When their eyes met, she saw a young man who was not very good-looking but clean and pleasing to the eye. She nodded to him happily, thanking him for his honesty and frankness. Lu Qing smiled and applauded in response. Not bad. The atmosphere in Xiushan City is very good. That young man is very straightforward and honest. I like. The martial artists of Tiangao City's preliminaries looked over and whispered to each other happily and excitedly. The disciples and students of the martial arts club were quite surprised. They looked over and saw a familiar figure. All the words in their mouths were swallowed back. Lu Cheng? He's back. Chairman Wei Renjie and Qin Rui were surprised at first, then delighted. However, their reactions were drowned out by the sound of the referee announcing the start of the next round. Qin Rui stood up in the midst of the fierce fight. He walked to Lu Cheng's side from behind and squeezed in. He smiled and said, "You didn't say you were coming yesterday. My mom abandoned me. I had to come and join in the fun and borrow the strength training gym." Lu Qing answered casually. He chuckled and said, "A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes. I was a little surprised just now." "Hee, thanks for your guidance. Master Wenguang is also very helpful," Qin Rui said modestly, unable to hide his self-satisfaction. Lu Qing put his hands on his knees and watched the match seriously. He said, "When it comes to martial arts, it's ultimately up to you. If a cow doesn't drink water, it's useless to force it. Not bad. You can fight for the professional 9th pin certificate in April. Oh right, how many exchanges are you going to fight?" He just asked casually. Chairman means to fight about 10 rounds and try to fight with the teams from the surrounding cities, so that everyone can gain more practical experience. Next up is Fenhu City's preliminaries team and Lenning City's bat team. This team is very strong. They have a Dan stage fighter, and made it to the second stage of the preliminaries last year. Unfortunately, compared to the teams from the provinces with strong martial arts, they're much weaker and didn't make it to the next stage. Qin Rui said excitedly. Okay. Lu Qing didn't pay much attention, and just took it as a casual chat. The exchange was different from the official competition. This time, there were a total of 8 rounds. The main force and substitutes of both sides were given the opportunity to fight in pairs. No matter who won or lost, they would leave the arena. At 10:30, the exchange ended. Xiushan City got a good score of 5-3. Wei Renjie was very happy. He talked for a long time with the coach of Tiangao City and invited them to lunch. When the team of Tiangao City entered the locker room to take a shower and rest, he and Monk Wenguang turned to Lu Cheng and said warmly, "Lu, do you want to have lunch together?" "Chairman, there's no need. There are too many people and I don't know them well. It's boring." Lu Cheng expressed his thoughts frankly. Okay, I'll treat you to a good meal later. Wei Renjie was not angered by his rejection. Instead, he chuckled and said, Initially, I wanted to advise you to participate in a few preliminaries to ensure everyone's safety, but you've improved too quickly. I'm too embarrassed to ask you again. A rank 6 martial artist participating in the preliminaries, isn't that bullying? Ba. Benefactor Wei is right. A 6th pin fighter can be the main force in the North-South regional competition. He can even be a substitute in the advancement competition. Monk Wenguang looked at Lu Cheng with a warm smile and sized him up from head to toe. The preliminaries were the 4th level of professional competition, the lowest level. The 3rd level was called the North-South Regional Preparatory Competition. In this level, the clubs or teams of the upper-middle level usually had a high-ranked Inhuman dance stage fighter as the main force and a 6th pin or 7th pin fighter as the main force. In the 2nd level of the advancement competition, the forces of the upper-middle level had no or only one physical invulnerability expert. They had an Inhuman as the main force and a 6th pin or 7th pin fighter as the substitute. In other words, even if Lu Cheng graduated now, he wouldn't have to worry about not having a place to stay. Lu Cheng was a little scared by Monk Wenguang's weird look. He laughed dryly and said, I'd better focus on the university martial arts competition first. After a few words of greeting, he said goodbye and went upstairs to the strength training gymnasium. Qin Rui followed him and asked with concern, What are you going to do for lunch? Do you want me to pack something for you? No, I'll just have a meal nearby. I still have to continue my training later. Lu Cheng shook his hand. You still have training in the afternoon? Qin Rui asked in surprise. It's fine anyway. Lu Cheng sighed and laughed in a low voice. Peng Liyun is not that easy to catch up with. Qin Rui listened in a daze. Watching Lu Cheng's back disappear at the entrance of the stairs, he suddenly felt that his previous complacency was not worth mentioning. Cheng is already sprinting to the top of his age group in the country. He's really not in the same world as us. In the locker room, Jiang Shuiyan came out of the shower. While drying her hair with a dry towel, she was typing on her phone. Sister Shuiyan, you fought really well today. Huang Bing, the substitute player, gave her a thumbs up. Yeah, the audience in Xioshan was shocked. They even applauded you. Tandy Gao, the main force player, echoed. The audience laughed and cheered, making Jiang Shuiyan both happy and embarrassed. She said modestly, That guy probably applauded because he thought I was pretty good looking. At this point, her heart skipped a beat. She frowned slightly and said hesitantly, Why do I feel that guy is a little familiar? Familiar? Tandy Gao and Huang Bing were lost in their memories. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that they had seen that guy applauding somewhere before. After a dozen seconds, Huang Bing suddenly opened his eyes wide. He matched that guy with a figure in his memory and blurted out, Lu Cheng. For martial arts fans and TV viewers, once the craze passed, they would soon forget the champion of the provincial youth tournament. Without continuous promotion, they would at most have an impression of him. But in the martial arts circle of the province, he was definitely a figure that could not be ignored. Lu Cheng? Hearing Huang Bing's words, the figure in Jiang Shuiyan's mind suddenly became clear. She said in surprise and joy, It's him. Yes, it's him. It's really him. He actually watched such a low-level competition. Lu Cheng, Tandy Gao and the others looked at each other to confirm. They couldn't help but be silent for a while. After a long time, Tandy Gao said with emotion, Shuiyan, even Lu Cheng applauded for you. You don't have to be so modest. Jiang Shuiyan raised her head slightly and couldn't help but smile. Chapter 352. When the Tiangao City team came out of the locker room and met up with the Xioshan preliminaries team, Jiang Shuiyan and Huang Bing couldn't help but try to identify that familiar figure. Unfortunately, they couldn't do so and only felt regret. After recognizing Lu Cheng, they remembered some forgotten details. For example, during the provincial youth tournament, Lu Cheng represented the Gushan Martial Arts School, and they were now at the Gushan Martial Arts School. No wonder they met him. After the youth tournament, Most of the martial artists watched Lu Cheng's battle videos over and over again. Except for a few who had turned into fans, no one would watch videos related to the tournament over and over again. Primates tend to forget things that aren't that important at an alarming rate. Of course, if Xiaoshan had directly displayed the words Gushan Martial Arts School, when they had first confirmed the schedule of the friendly competition, it would not have been difficult for Jiang Shuiyan and the others to notice and make the connection. However, they had only been led here after arriving in the city. Some of the contestants had not even seen the signboard of the martial arts school clearly. As for the martial artists who had recognized the words, most of their attention was focused on the upcoming competition. The content of the signboard was almost gone. They only casually said, "Oh, Gushan Martial Arts School." Jiang Shuiyan was a little disappointed that Lu Qing didn't appear. But when she glanced over, she found Monk Wenguang holding a mobile phone and using his index finger to poke and draw something. He seemed to be having a hard time. For some reason, she felt that the scene of a monk holding a modern technology was very strange. So she turned her head and smiled. "Master, do you need help? I'm the best at teaching the elderly to use mobile phones." The moment Jiang Shuiyan turned her head, Monk Wenguang pressed his finger and locked the screen. Then he smiled and said, "Donor Jiang, thank you. I'm just writing an email. I don't need any help." Wow, he knows how to write an email with a mobile phone. Jiang Shuiyan smiled secretly and praised him from the bottom of her heart. "Master, you really keep up with the times. Ba. If I don't go to hell, who will?" Monk Wenguang put his palms together and replied with a smile. "Swordsman, swordsman, swordsman." In the inner disciples' strength training room, a deep ancient sound kept reverberating, as if a mysterious feeling had connected the heaven and earth. With an empty thermos behind him, Lu Qing stood still and hugged a mercury-lead ball with both hands. He let it fall gently and roll slowly with a rhythm. Using external pressure and subtle feeling, he worked with the tempering and nourishing of his body and spirit. This was the swordsman formula that the Queen of Thought, Fei Dan, had created. Not only did Lu Qing use it here, but he also used it when he visualized the frozen river diagram, the frozen ground diagram, the prairie fire diagram, and the Zhurong diagram during his Dan stage cultivation in the ice sect and the fire sect. While he was tempering again and again, a wonderful change happened in the half-closed power room. On one side, the temperature was rising, and there was a hidden scorching heat. On the other side, a cool breeze was blowing, and the surface of the metal apparatus was getting colder and colder to the touch. The two intertwined and formed a vortex, rotating slowly and strangely maintaining a balance. Lu Qing didn't know how long it had been, but he finished his internal training. When he put down the giant lead ball and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, the cold and heat in the power room were immediately out of balance and collided with each other, creating a strong wind and even a thin mist that disappeared in a flash. Lu Qing bent down and picked up a towel to wipe the sweat on his face. He looked a little tired, but his body was unusually refreshed. He picked up his things and walked out of the room, planning to find a place to practice his punches and kicks. Brother Lu Qing. When he walked to the stairs, he saw his cousin Qi Yunfei's boyfriend, Ding Yanba, standing straight beside her with his hands hanging down. "Didn't you rest at noon?" Lu Qing asked with a smile. Ding Yanba said with excitement and joy, "We only practice in the morning." "So he waited here. I heard from Fei Fei that you got the certificate of amateur ninth pin." Lu Qing put one hand in his pocket and asked casually. Qi Yunfei was like a husky that broke free from the chain after she started studying at Xiaoshan No. 1 Middle School. She came home only once a month, and was either playing with her roommates or going on dates with her boyfriend. Fortunately, the midterm exam gave her a head-on blow. After that, she calmed down and began to study seriously. Yes, it hasn't been long," Ding Yanba replied cautiously, but his eyebrows and the corners of his eyes revealed the joy and pride in his heart. "Not bad. You've only been practicing martial arts for half a year, and your body hasn't fully developed yet. You can get the certificate of amateur ninth pin. That's pretty good. There's hope for you to make a living." Lu Qing was not stingy with his praise. "I heard from Fei Fei that you only took a month?" Ding Yanba asked curiously while beaming with joy. "Sort of." Lu Qing had long passed the stage of showing off to kids. He said affirmatively. Practice hard. As long as you work hard, you'll have a chance. He was hinting that if Ding Yanba could improve to the level of amateur first pin, and his general physical fitness, he wouldn't hide the internal training method he got. Ding Yanba had heard Qin Rui mention similar things several times before. After hearing the tune, he knew what Qin Rui meant. He immediately answered excitedly, "Yes, brother Lucheng." Lucheng nodded slightly and didn't say more. He found another place and replied to Yenjika's message first. Then he started to practice his punches and kicks, making cracking sounds and creating wind. He focused on the 13th move of the ice sect, Snow Cover, and the 19th move, Cold Swallow. They were ingenious and required a lot of effort. There were too many changes to explore. It was not easy to just throw them aside after mastering them. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Lucheng felt his energy was running out. He finished his practice, took a shower, and changed into clean and fresh clothes. After practicing like this, I feel so fulfilled. He sent a message to Yenjika with a snickering emoji. Yenjika was still in the middle of a family activity. After a few minutes, she said with bright eyes, "Our Chung is so hardworking. I'm ashamed." Hee, it's very motivating to have a goal in front of you. Lucheng replied with an emoji of showing off his arm muscles. To be honest, the guardian willpower will give me continuous motivation. But if there's no urgent matter or situation, I won't be able to sprint. Step by step, it won't give me a sense of drive. Of course, it was steadier and longer lasting. Then should I give you some sense of crisis? Yenjika sent an emoji covering mouth and laughing. Actually, I feel bad for you since you're so tired. Keep it up and defeat the Demon King Peng Liyun. Okay. Lucheng didn't say anything heroic. Instead, he smiled and said, "I'll have more time to rest if you stay with me more." After leaving the Gushan Martial Arts School, he went to visit his grandparents on the way. After that, he leisurely returned home. Lying on the bed without caring about his image, he chatted with Yenjika while reading a novel. It was a very relaxing life, clearing away the fatigue in his soul. It was late at night. In a temple at the foot of Xioshan, Monk Wenguang was turning the prayer beads with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he bounced to the entrance of the wing room without moving his body and waist. He opened the door and looked at the two people outside. So fast. One of them was tall and majestic. His aura was restrained, but there was a sense of intimidation when he looked around. If it was summer, all snakes, insects, rats, and ants would have retreated due to the inexplicable evil spirit. The burly man laughed and said, "Not bad, not bad. Donor Dong, please." Monk Wenguang raised his hand. When Dong Xiaoyang walked in, Wenguang turned to the other person and said respectfully, "Senior Sinful Flame, please." The newcomer had deep eye sockets, a straight nose, gray hair, and fire in his eyes. He looked like a middle-aged man. He was the divine enchanter of Sinful Flame. The divine enchanter of Sinful Flame nodded slightly and walked in silently. After Wenguang closed the door, Dong Xiaoyang paced a few steps and asked with great interest, "Master, when do we start?" "Namo Amitba." "Donor Dong, don't be so anxious." Wenguang answered in surprise. "I'm quite anxious." Dong Xiaoyang smiled and said, "Since he won the provincial youth tournament, I've been unconvinced. I want to find a chance to compete with him and see who's the best among the young fighters in Xing province. Unfortunately, I can't do it without an order. I can only wait. Now I finally have a chance. Master, how can I not be anxious?" His face was mature and his posture was bold. He seemed to be in his 30s, but the meaning behind his words was that he might not be 26 years old, or even 22 years old. "But you have to wait for the right time," Monk Wenguang persuaded. At this time, the divine enchanter of Sinful Flame, who had been silent all this time, said in a low voice, "Don't alarm the local authorities. Senior Sinful Flame, I know." Dong Xiaoyang replied with a smile and turned to Wenguang. "The target only has one life and death experience? That's too little. A fighter who hasn't seen much blood in the arena is naturally weak. That's why I asked you to come." Wenguang put his palms together and smiled. Dong Xiaoyang laughed and said, "Okay. Then I'll let him experience what it means to be between life and death. There was no first place in literature, and no second place in martial arts. There was no exception to the ambition to be the best. Chapter 353. Humph! How dare you eat grilled eggplant behind my back? At 9 p.m., Lu Qing took out his phone at the entrance of Old Lu Barbecue and saw the message from Yenjika a few minutes ago. Lu Qing smiled unconsciously. It's Qin Rui's treat. He said he wanted to thank me for guiding him into meditation. After yesterday's exchange, Qin Rui had become famous in the circle. I don't care. Unless you pack 2 eggplants for me. That's the only way to prove that you're not monopolizing the food. Yenjika said with an emoji with red eyes and drooling heart. Lu Qing chuckled and typed quickly on the keyboard. I was just about to ask you if you want a takeout delivery guy, snickering. Since you want it so sincerely, I'll generously pack it for you. I'm looking forward to it. Yenjika sent an emoji with a bowl in front of me, waiting to be fed. Seeing that her reply speed had increased, Lu Qing asked, have you finished shopping and eating with Empress Dowager? Yes. Everyone says girls are good at shopping and don't feel tired. Why am I not like that? Am I not a girl? I miss you so much, Cheng. I want you to massage my legs and feet. I want you to give me a tremor force massage. I can't say that I can do it easily with the swordsman formula. That's not fun. Lu Qing replied quickly. Qin Rui paid the bill and walked over. He patted Lu Qing on the shoulder and said, let's go. You guys go first. I'll grill something to pack. Lu Qing pointed at the barbecue grill. Why didn't you say so earlier? Qin Rui complained. You're treating me like an outsider. Lu Qing smiled. It's more meaningful if I pay for it myself. Got it. Qin Rui suddenly understood. He smiled and said, we won't delay your date. We'll go first. Bye. Lu Qing waved to him and Ding Yanba and turned to the boss. 2 eggplants to go. Well, don't put any onions. Speaking of this, he thought of last year's spring festival. At that time, he hadn't confirmed his relationship with Ku yet. In order to bring her delicious food from Xioshan, he specially went through the trouble of buying insulated lunchboxes and other things. He also repeatedly reminded the boss not to put onions in the food, which made him a little annoyed. Sure. The boss readily agreed. There was no change in his expression. Obviously, he didn't remember that part of the past. He could recognize Lu Qing, who had been here many times, but he definitely couldn't remember the trivial things about him. When I mentioned the eggplant takeout, the boss would tell me not to put onions, right? Then I would be promoted to a regular customer. Lu Qing felt warm and his thoughts drifted. Unknowingly, almost a year had passed. Beautiful days always came too quickly. It felt like it was just yesterday. While waiting for the grilled eggplant, Lu Qing stood aside and played with his phone. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure from the corner of his eye, Jiang Fei, who was wearing a bulging black down jacket. Hey fatty Jiang. Then he noticed that there were 2 men and 2 women following behind Jiang Fei. At first glance, they seemed to be the type that was heavily schooled. This should be the classmate that Fatty Jiang was talking about, the one who came here to play for 2 days. Sure enough, the first meal they came was Old Lu's barbecue. Isn't he afraid that they won't be able to stand the taste here? He thought to himself. Jiang Fei also didn't expect to meet Lu Qing here. He was stunned for a while, and then waved with a smile. I said I would come to you in 2 days. After greeting, he hurriedly introduced them. First he pointed to Lu Qing and said, my classmate. Then he gestured to the back and said, my classmate. Speaking of this, he was amused. What kind of introduction is this? He hurriedly laughed and said, high school classmate, college classmate. Hello. Jiang Fei's college classmates greeted politely. Welcome to Xioshan. Lu Qing said politely. He didn't pay much attention to the appearance of the 2 men and 2 women. He only felt that their clothes were more fashionable than those in a small place like Xioshan. Jiang Fei glanced inside and said casually, what a coincidence. Cheng, let's eat together? I've eaten. I'm waiting for my leader's grilled eggplant. Lu Qing chuckled. Your leader? Jiang Fei was dumbfounded for a few seconds and finally came to his senses. He shook his finger enviously and said, "I was kind enough to invite you, but you showed off in front of me. You must compensate for my mental loss later." After a few words of greeting, he led the 4 students into the house and found a seat. Lu Cheng waited for the packed eggplant and walked to the entrance of the alley, ready to call a taxi. Seeing his back disappear around the corner with the lunchbox, a girl wearing a Korean-style coat among Jiang Fei's classmates laughed twice and said in a soft voice, "Jiang Fei, your high school classmate is in good health. He only wore so little in such cold weather." Xiushan was humid and cold. Many northern men would shout that they were frozen to death. Lu Cheng, on the other hand, only wore a thin sweater inside and a sports jacket outside, which made people shiver. Maybe he wants to be elegant instead of cold? A plump girl holding a boy's hand laughed and said, "She had charming features and a pretty face, but a little chubby and a little round face." Jiang Fei answered awkwardly, "He is in good health. He is a monster." "I don't believe it. Boys are all so pretentious." The girl who spoke first covered her mouth and laughed. Her voice was much better than her appearance. She didn't continue the topic and said, "My cousin is like this. He doesn't wear a sweater in winter and only wears a down jacket. As a result, he has chilblains on both hands, feet, and ears. He is so pitiful." Seeing that they didn't continue to talk about Lu Cheng, Jiang Fei didn't bother to explain. He chatted with them and urged them to eat the skewers. Outside the alley, the dim lights on the side of the road formed a sharp contrast with the darkness inside, as if they were in a different world. Just at this moment, Lu Cheng heard a faint shout. "Help!" With a swoosh, Lu Cheng turned his head to look at the source of the sound. He saw that the walls were in tatters and most of them had collapsed. Inside the walls, there were weeds and scattered bricks. They clustered around an abandoned 6-story building. On the side of the 6-story building, there were several large red words, "To demolish," written on it. "Help!" A woman's voice came from inside, containing strong fear and panic. Lu Cheng didn't hesitate. He bravely changed his direction and carefully jumped over the hole in the wall. He quickly ran to the building that was to be demolished. He planned to be a good Samaritan. For him, the criminals that he met every day were nothing. "Help!" The woman's voice sounded like she was crying. Lu Cheng identified the location and came to the first floor where the windows were all broken. He jumped into the air. He pressed and pulled with his right hand and flipped to the second floor. He rushed to the place where the voice came from as fast as he could. While running, he suddenly had an indescribable subtle feeling in his heart. All the hair on his body stood on end. Without thinking, Lu Cheng stopped and gathered his qi, blood, force and spirit in his lower abdomen. Bang! At this moment, the wall on the side in front of him suddenly collapsed. Bricks and stones flew and hit him like bullets in the smoke. The sky was full of flowers, and every drop was fatal. He could block some of them, but not all of them. He could dodge some of them, but not all of them. What was even more frightening was that behind the flying bricks and stones, a majestic figure broke through the wall and bent down. The figure pounced on Lu Cheng, intending to give him a fatal blow while he was dealing with the previous wave of attacks. Lu Cheng didn't realize that he had fallen into a trap until now. This dangerous master was coming for him. He didn't have time to think about why he had such an encounter, nor did he have time to regret anything, because the flying bricks were coming for him. In another room on the second floor, the divine enchanter of Sin Flame shook his head and said, as expected of a young man who grew up in a peaceful era, he didn't realize that he would be plotted against or trapped. He was used to doing things according to his experience in a peaceful environment. That was why he fell for the trap so easily. "Isn't this why you are here?" Monk Wenguang said with a smile. Behind them, a scantily clad girl was leaning against the wall and sleeping. With bricks covering his body and a strong enemy behind him, everything was so dangerous that it seemed like there was no chance for him to survive. If it were in the past, Lu Cheng could only block and dodge, playing micro-maneuvers and hoping for luck. But this time, he had a premonition 1 second in advance. Boom! His Dan force gushed out and he exerted force under his feet, breaking the floor that had been in disrepair for a long time. Amidst the huge movement, falling bricks and rising dust, he took the initiative to fall to the bottom floor, avoiding the shower of flowers and the subsequent attacks. Interesting. Dong Xiaoyang thought to himself, and became more interested. He didn't jump into the hole that Lu Qing made because he was afraid of being ambushed by the enemy below. Instead, he used force concentration and stayed where he was. Boom. The ceiling was broken again. Dong Xiaoyang jumped down under the cover of falling bricks. Boom. In Old Lu's barbecue restaurant not far away, a plump, round-faced girl listened carefully and frowned. What's that sound? It's normal. That's the bar street. Jiang Fei answered casually. Oh. The round-faced girl relaxed and waited for the barbecue. Chapter 354. Bang. 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 The falling bricks smashed into the ground, stirring up more smoke. All of this was like a scene from a movie, playing in front of Lu Qing in a surreal state. He smelled danger that could disappear at any time in the future. The figure with the murderous intent was definitely a very powerful enemy. If he was alone, he would die on the spot if he made a slight mistake, not to mention that he might have other helpers. He was really surrounded by enemies, swaying in the wind and rain. Lu Cheng's pores were tightly closed, and his goosebumps were still visible. He was indescribably scared and nervous, but these were combined into a strong desire to survive. No, I don't want to die here. The sad tears of his parents, the love hidden in their nagging and silence, the life that finally saw the light after the hardships, Yenjika's heartbroken expression, the ecstasy and excitement when he confessed his love, and the sweet and beautiful daily life that was not full of ups and downs flashed in his mind. No, I don't want to let the pain come true, and I don't want to let the happiness come true. Lu Qing shouted in his heart. His willpower was strong, and his eyes were shining. All his emotions were burning fiercely, supporting his body. Bang. The lunchbox with the roasted eggplant flew out of the glassless window in an arc boom. The ceiling was broken again, and the stones and bricks fell down. Lu Qing landed on the ground and made a gesture with his hands. He visualized the sharp ancient characters in his mind. Facing the figure in the air, he shouted with a strong fighting spirit, "Army!" The atmosphere in the surroundings immediately became desperate. It was as if there was smoke everywhere, and thousands of soldiers and horses were surrounding them from all directions. Lu Qing felt that this was the most powerful he had ever used the army formula since he mastered it. His state of mind and emotions were very compatible with the secret method, so he broke through the past. Army. Dong Xiaoyang heard the murderous voice. He felt like a gun was pointed at his head, and the trigger was pulled. He shuddered violently, and his body was obviously shaking. Lu Qing took 2 steps forward and gathered his qi and blood. Before Dong Xiaoyang fell to the ground, he fiercely hit him with the thunder roar zen. There was no hesitation, no mercy, no determination, no hesitation, no mercy, firm, decisive and cold-blooded. If I sympathize with him, who will sympathize with me? There was no mercy between life and death. At this moment, Dong Xiaoyang's eyes suddenly became clear and cold. This was the rock heart that had been through many battles and dangers. It had a strong resistance to the army formula. What a joke! Where were you when I led my team into the enemy's territory, into the dragon's pool, and beheaded the enemy's general at the brink of death? What a joke! Where were you when I met the fierce killer on a narrow path and killed him by a hair's breadth? How could a martial artist who had only seen blood once display the true essence of that secret technique? What I've experienced is something you can't even imagine. Using such a secret technique on me is like showing off your slight skill in front of an expert. Dong Xiaoyang suddenly curled up his body in midair, condensing his qi, blood, spirit, and strength into a single point. Pa! He turned his body halfway and swung his swollen right arm at Lu Qing, using the momentum of his fall and the power of the dance stage to punch his greenish-black fist with bulging veins. Just as the 2 fists were about to collide, Dong Xiaoyang completed a strange visualization, causing the surging force to strangely shrink at the fist area. The contraction followed by the explosion surged out like crazy waves. Bam! A muffled sound echoed in the room of dozens of square meters. Lu Cheng's fist was slightly painful, and his arm was trembling. He was forced to step back by the strange double explosion. 1 step, 2 steps, he couldn't control himself and hit the wall with a bang. This was a 6-story residential building that was to be demolished. It was made up of many apartments and the layout was not spacious enough. There were walls everywhere. Fighting here was like fighting in someone else's living room or bedroom. Even the slightest stretch would lead to obstacles. Boom. Lu Cheng's back tightened and broke through the load-bearing wall, falling into another room. He knew he was at a disadvantage, and the situation was extremely critical. However, the ice mirror had been formed. He controlled his center of gravity calmly, and waved his right hand quickly, shooting out a violent red fireball in an attempt to stop Dong Xiaoyang's approach. Following that, he hooked his left hand, and the glittering white cold light moved close to the ground, leaping toward the enemy. The top, middle, and bottom paths were all sealed off. Bam! The lunchbox with the roasted eggplant outside the window had just fallen to the ground. Dong Xiaoyang was slightly affected by the thunder roar zen, and slightly swayed in the air. However, as soon as his feet touched the ground, he strode forward to catch up with Lu Cheng, not giving him a chance to stabilize the situation. After 1 step, he saw the red light reflected in his eyes, and saw the fireball flying toward him. Dong Xiaoyang bounced his back and swayed his center of gravity. His footwork was disorderly and smoothly turned into an arc, bypassing the attack of ice and fire from the side. Boom! The flame exploded and the cold light leaped. He broke through the wall and broke into the room that Lu Cheng fell into. He was really imposing. Bam! 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 The load-bearing wall behind him collapsed completely, turning into a pile of messy stones. At this time, Lu Cheng had already stabilized his stance. Instead of retreating, he took a step forward and rushed to the enemy's side. Between life and death, the brave one wins. His eyes flashed and his mind was filled with white snow. He flicked his wrists and elbows, aiming at 7 places on Dong Xiaoyang's body. At the same time, the cold light spread out from his shaking fists, creating a fog of ice crystals that blocked Dong Xiaoyang's vision. The ice crystals kept vibrating, converging into a buzzing sound that interfered with the enemy's hearing. The 13th move of the ice sect, Snow Cover. In such an environment, Lu Cheng, who had not yet released the strength in his hands, suddenly clamped his tailbone, straightened his legs, and silently kicked out with his right foot towards the enemy's ankle joint. Dong Xiaoyang seemed to have anticipated this. He put his arms in front of him, bulged his thighs, and kicked back fiercely with his left foot. In a split second, Lu Cheng suddenly bent his spine forward, lowered his center of gravity, and let his right foot touch the ground in advance. After touching the ground, he forcibly dragged his body to the side of the enemy, creating a perfect opportunity the moment Dong Xiaoyang kicked out his left foot. This was the application of the 19th move of the ice sect, Cold Swallow. Lu Cheng incorporated the technique of this move into Snow Cover to form a combo attack, which was equivalent to a combination of the 2 moves. After losing to Peng Liyun, his hard work and attempts were not in vain. This was the result of his hard work. He had reached a higher level and followed his heart without breaking the rules. In his mind, he visualized a frozen river and shaking thunderclouds. Lu Cheng was neither happy nor anxious. He raised his right arm high, clenched his fist and punched down. Simplified physical invulnerability move, severe warning. The distance was too close. Dong Xiaoyang's left foot missed, and he was suddenly in a precarious situation. He had lost his previous advantage, and was in an extremely dangerous situation. Facing this situation, he did not despair nor panic. He immediately gathered all his strength, and let the danqi erupt above his spine. Bam! His spine bent like a hard bow, dragging his body to the back. With a bang, he knocked down another load-bearing wall. Lu Cheng did not feel depressed when he missed the severe warning. Full of fighting spirit and unusual calmness, he swayed his center of gravity and pounced on the enemy who had not yet fallen to the ground. He spurted out his danqi and shortened most of the distance between them. He was about to catch up. Monk Wenguang carried the sleeping girl, and moved to another position with the divine enchanter of Sin Flame. He sighed in a low voice. He really has a talent for fighting. Senior, please cover your voice. Don't attract the attention of others. Okay. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame nodded slightly. After knocking down the wall, Dong Xiaoyang regained his balance in midair with the help of the force. Looking at Lu Cheng, who was closing in on him in a flash, he suddenly hid his eyes and let his eyes be filled with a terrifying white. He visualized the corresponding picture, shook his chest and abdomen, opened his throat, and exhaled loudly. Bam! The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Lu Cheng felt like he was in an empty room in the middle of the night. He heard a knock at the door, and outside the window, there were graves and the cold wind whistling. In an instant, he was frightened and nervous. His body could not help but tremble, but his willpower was at its strongest. He quickly calmed down, and made a gesture to use the 9 words formula. Forward! His voice turned into a sharp arrow, exploding in front of the enemy with his negative feelings. Dong Xiaoyang's eyes were cold. He did not waver and seized the opportunity to close in on Lu Cheng. He used force concentration to expand his body and hit the same move as before. Bam! 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 Lu Cheng responded with consecutive dance stage outbursts, but he was beaten back by the duet again and again. He broke through one wall after another, shaking the entire 6-story building. Clang! Clang! Dong Xiaoyang did not recklessly attack head-on. He changed his rhythm and direction from time to time. He did not give Lu Cheng a chance to use simplified physical invulnerability moves, or dodge his attacks. Quintuple explosion, sextuple explosion, and septuple explosion. Lu Cheng seemed to be at an absolute disadvantage. He kept retreating and knocking down walls. His back hurt, but his footwork and posture were not disordered. Relying on the sensing ability of the ice mirror, he always detected the enemy's attack in advance and blocked the enemy's attack. Without this kung fu, he felt that he would not be able to withstand more than a few moves from the duet. Bam! Another load-bearing wall collapsed, and the building shook again. Dong Xiaoyang flashed to Lu Cheng's left side, pulled back his arm and punched again, repeating the previous moves. But this time he did not use force concentration. Instead, he visualized 2 pictures, flame condensation and infusion explosion. Simplified physical invulnerability move, internal explosion. When the punch hit, the force would explode in the enemy's body. His previous duet attack was not a fake move. It was not an attack to paralyze Lu Cheng, or to cover up the use of this move. In a life-and-death situation, there was no such thing as a complicated and long-term plan. There was only a flash of inspiration and the right time because there were too many variables. Dong Xiaoyang's arm muscles undulated as he threw out a punch. He was expecting Lu Cheng to subconsciously parry his attack like he had done so many times before. If Lu Cheng was aware of it, he could force Lu Cheng to dodge, and create an opportunity for him to follow up with a series of attacks. Lu Cheng's heart was like an ice mirror, reflecting the surroundings. He sensed that Dong Xiaoyang did not withdraw his qi, blood, and force at close range. No. Lu Cheng tensed up and his hair stood on end. He grasped a few thoughts that flashed through his mind. Without hesitation, he exerted force on his feet and leaped into the air. This move was the standard way to die in the challenge tournament, unless one had the supernatural ability to fly, or was close to the physical invulnerability state. But in today's environment, Lu Cheng was not in a hurry to fall and could not change his direction. Crack! He jumped close to the ceiling and stretched out his hands. His 10 fingers clenched into the stone and hung in the air. Then he used force concentration. With his fingers as a fulcrum, he bounced back and leaped backward like a gymnast. His feet kicked the ceiling, as if he was going to use the rebound force to attack. Below, Dong Xiaoyang could almost foresee what would happen if he changed direction forcibly and jumped up to give Lu Cheng an internal explosion punch in the air. In that case, Lu Cheng would change direction and land on the ground from another position. Then Lu Cheng would give him a fatal blow in the air. The difference between the target is the ceiling, and the target is Lu Cheng, meant that he could not touch the ceiling, so there was nothing he could rely on. Thinking of this, Dong Xiaoyang lowered his waist and abdomen, and made a prelude to change direction forcibly. He wanted to trick Lu Cheng into pouncing on him while he dodged the position, and attacked from behind with his elbow. This was not a fake move. It was just that his movement was slow, and he left some leeway. He could still make Lu Cheng's absolute reaction and misjudge in a split second. Bam! Lu Cheng stomped on the ground and exerted a tremendous amount of strength. The ceiling cracked open and the rocks fell down. He used the momentum to bounce back, but instead of pouncing on Dong Xiaoyang, he jumped to the window like a fish, as if he wanted to escape from the battlefield. "You want to escape?" Dong Xiaoyang smiled. His waist and abdomen bounced back. He straightened his knees and changed direction forcibly to pounce on Lu Cheng's back. "This is the flaw, you exposed yourself." Lu Cheng had just jumped to the window when he felt the pain in his back and the strong wind behind him. However, he did not panic. Instead, he seemed to be expecting something. He put his hands on the window, leaned his body forward, and did a twisting kick behind him. Bam! His tattered shoes flew out, along with the red flame and crystal-cold light under his feet. They were shot at Dong Xiaoyang, who was pouncing on him. Dong Xiaoyang snorted. He exerted strength under his feet and bulged his muscles. He was about to make an explosion in the air and set off the strong wind to trigger the attack of ice and fire in advance. Then he would break through with his body. Boom! Just as he was about to move, the fireball exploded first. The heat spread out and turned the cold light into a mist. It blocked his vision and made him feel that his surroundings were blurred. Bam! The mist split open. A fist with bulging veins was like a weapon that could split the chaos. It was punching at Dong Xiaoyang's head from above. Escaping was for a better attack. Lu Cheng's eyes were sharp and his fist was firm. Most of his muscles bulged and became taller, as if he was going to sweep away all obstacles in front of him that would destroy his beautiful life. Dong Xiaoyang, who did not have time to make a duet, could only use force concentration to defend himself. He shook his right arm and moved upward. Bam! This was the first time Dong Xiaoyang was forced to retreat in a fight of life and death. Lu Cheng was not going to let him go. He quickly closed the distance and made consecutive explosions, not giving his opponent a chance to make a duet. Triple explosion, quadruple explosion, quintuple explosion. He integrated the skills of 24 blizzard strikes into it, and fought with Dong Xiaoyang at close range. He punched hard to prevent Dong Xiaoyang from making a weird duet, and using unknown secret skills. Sextuple explosion, septuple explosion, octuple explosion. Lu Cheng became fiercer and fiercer. He used dance stage explosions as if they were free. At this point, he also realized that the killer was weaker than Peng Liyun. He was not close to the inhuman level. In other words, although his opponent was strong, he was not a monster. Bam! 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 Lu Cheng was full of fighting spirit. Sweat steamed from his head and condensed into a cloud of white mist. Bam! Dong Xiaoyang was finally crushed by the ferocious, brutal blizzard. He broke through the bearing wall and fell down. The 6-story building shook more and more violently. In the sound of falling stones, Lu Cheng stepped on the ground and followed closely to his opponent, who had just stabilized his center of gravity. He visualized the red sun and the frozen river in his mind. Boom! The red sun hit the ice river and both disappeared. Lu Cheng pulled back his arm and threw out a punch. The mutated version of severe warning. Dong Xiaoyang did not panic in such a situation. It was as if he had experienced this countless times. He did not have time to jump up and he knew he could not take it head-on. He simply fell down and rolled on the ground. Army! At this moment, Lu Cheng dispersed his force and made a hand gesture. He shouted in an ancient voice. Dong Xiaoyang, who was rolling on the ground, was shocked. He felt that he was surrounded by enemies because of his situation. After a short tremble, his strong willpower dispersed the influence. But Lu Cheng took the opportunity to slide closer and kick out his right leg. Bam! 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 Dong Xiaoyang tried his best to block a few moves, but he was kicked out of his stance and flew into the air, crashing into the wall. Bam! The impact caused the building to sway. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Lu Cheng looked calm. He slid forward and was about to break Dong Xiaoyang's neck. At this moment, the shaking building finally reached its limit. Countless stones fell from above, making a dull and terrifying sound. Lu Cheng paused for a moment. In order to protect himself, he used force concentration to break through the side wall and jump to the open space outside. Dong Xiaoyang smiled bitterly, his eyes full of disappointment. Boom! Lu Qing heard a deafening sound as soon as he steadied himself. He saw half of the 6-story building collapse and then the whole building, burying the terrifying killer inside. He should be dead, right? Lu Qing did not dare to stay in the thick smoke. He was afraid that there would be other enemies. Taking advantage of the cover, he climbed over the wall into a nearby neighborhood. He found a secret place to hide, and then took out his phone to call Geyser. This was the first time he encountered such a situation. He subconsciously asked for help from his master. "Hello, master. Someone just tried to kill me," Lu Qing said as soon as the call went through. Who? Who dares? Geyser was stunned at first, then became furious. "I don't know either." Lu Qing was still a little confused. It happened so suddenly that he did not understand what was going on. Who did I offend? He thought, feeling wronged and angry. Are you safe now? Go find Xing if you are not. Now that you are safe, tell me the key points. Geyser calmed down and asked in confusion. Lu Qing told him what had happened, focusing on the opponent's moves and his own condition. In the end he asked, "Master, do you have any clues?" Geyser was silent for a moment. Then he clenched his teeth and said, "I know what happened. It's okay now. You can go back to sleep. There won't be a next time. Damn it, I'll tear down the base and apologize to the simplified physical invulnerability of the fire sect. Anyway, there won't be a next time. Don't ask for now. It won't do you any good if you know." Okay. Lu Qing was confused and chose to believe his master. It seemed that there was an inside story behind the attack. He walked out of the secluded place and looked at the place where the fight had just happened. The building had collapsed and smoke was everywhere. What was strange about this was that such a big commotion did not wake up the nearby residents. Weird. Lu Qing frowned. He thought for a while and called Yinjika. "Cheng, you're here?" the girl asked happily. "No, I ran into a situation. Can you bring me a pair of pants?" Lu Qing looked down at his torn jeans and did not know whether to laugh or cry. It was not a competition, so he did not wear a martial arts suit. The tight pants were destroyed by the force of the dance stage and soon became unshaped. Yinjika was confused. After the barbecue, Jiang Fei led the 4 students to the entrance of the alley and planned to drive around. As they walked, the girl in the Korean coat suddenly exclaimed and pointed to the side. "Isn't there a building there?" The plump girl with a round face looked over and saw the ruins inside the wall. She was also confused. "Yeah, I saw it too. It was there before the barbecue. Why did it collapse? Why did it collapse?" Chapter 355. Bang, bang, bang. The falling bricks smashed into the ground, stirring up more smoke. All of this was like a scene from a movie, playing in front of Lu Qing in an unreal state. He smelled danger that could disappear at any time in the future. The figure with the murderous intent was definitely a very powerful enemy. If he was alone, he would die on the spot if he made a slight mistake, not to mention that he might have other helpers. He was really surrounded by enemies, swaying in the wind and rain. Lu Cheng's pores were tightly closed, and his goosebumps were still visible. He was indescribably scared and nervous, but these were combined into a strong desire to survive. "No, I don't want to die here." The sad tears of his parents, the love hidden in their nagging and silence, the life that finally saw the light after the hardships, Yinjika's heartbroken expression, the ecstasy and excitement when he confessed his love, and the sweet and beautiful daily life that was not full of ups and downs flashed in his mind. "No, I don't want to let the pain come true. And I don't want to let the happiness come true," Lu Qing shouted in his heart. His willpower was strong, and his eyes were shining. All his emotions were burning fiercely, supporting his body. Bang. The lunchbox with the roasted eggplant flew out of the glassless window in an arc boom. The ceiling was broken again, and the stones and bricks fell down. Lu Qing landed on the ground and made a gesture with his hands. He visualized the sharp ancient characters in his mind. Facing the figure in the air, he shouted with a strong fighting spirit, "Army!" The atmosphere in the surroundings immediately became desperate. It was as if there was smoke everywhere, and thousands of soldiers and horses were surrounding them from all directions. Lu Cheng felt that this was the most powerful he had ever used the army formula since he mastered it. His state of mind and emotions were very compatible with the secret method, so he broke through the past. Army. Dong Xiaoyang heard the murderous voice. He felt like a gun was pointed at his head, and the trigger was pulled. He shuddered violently, and his body was obviously shaking. Lu Cheng took 2 steps forward and gathered his qi and blood. Before Dong Xiaoyang fell to the ground, he fiercely hit him with the thunder roar Zen. There was no hesitation, no mercy, no determination, no hesitation, no mercy, firm, decisive and cold-blooded. If I sympathize with him, who will sympathize with me? There was no mercy between life and death. At this moment, Dong Xiaoyang's eyes suddenly became clear and cold. This was the rock heart that had been through many battles and dangers. It had a strong resistance to the army formula. What a joke! Where were you when I led my team into the enemy's territory, into the dragon's pool, and beheaded the enemy's general at the brink of death? What a joke! Where were you when I met the fierce killer on a narrow path and killed him by a hair's breadth? How could a martial artist who had only seen blood once display the true essence of that secret technique? What I've experienced is something you can't even imagine. Using such a secret technique on me is like showing off your slight skill in front of an expert. Dong Xiaoyang suddenly curled up his body in midair, condensing his qi, blood, spirit, and strength into a single point. Pa! He turned his body halfway and swung his swollen right arm at Lu Cheng, using the momentum of his fall and the power of the dance stage to punch his greenish-black fist with bulging veins. Just as the 2 fists were about to collide, Dong Xiaoyang completed a strange visualization, causing the surging force to strangely shrink at the fist again. The contraction followed by the explosion surged out like crazy waves. Bam! A muffled sound echoed in the room of dozens of square meters. Lu Cheng's fist was slightly painful and his arm was trembling. He was forced to take a few steps back by the strange double explosion. 1 step, 2 steps, he couldn't control himself and hit the wall with a bang. This was a 6-story residential building that was to be demolished. It was made up of many apartments. The layout was not spacious enough, and there were walls everywhere. Fighting here was like fighting in someone else's living room or bedroom. Even the slightest stretch would lead to obstacles. Boom! Lu Cheng's back tightened and broke through the load-bearing wall, falling into another room. He knew he was at a disadvantage, and the situation was extremely critical. However, the ice mirror had been formed. He controlled his center of gravity calmly and waved his right hand quickly, shooting out a violent red fireball in an attempt to stop Dong Xiaoyang's approach. Following that, he hooked his left hand and the glittering white cold light moved close to the ground, leaping toward the enemy. The top, middle, and bottom paths were all sealed off. Bam! The lunchbox with the roasted eggplant outside the window had just fallen to the ground. Dong Xiaoyang was slightly affected by the thunder roar Zen, and slightly swayed in the air. However, as soon as his feet touched the ground, he strode forward to catch up with Lu Cheng, not giving him a chance to stabilize the situation. After 1 step, he saw the red light reflected in his eyes and saw the fireball flying toward him. Dong Xiaoyang bounced his back and swayed his center of gravity. His footwork was disorderly and smoothly turned into an arc, bypassing the attack of ice and fire from the side. Boom! The flame exploded and the cold light leaped. He broke through the wall and broke into the room that Lu Cheng fell into. He was really imposing. Bam! 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 The load-bearing wall behind him collapsed completely, and turned into a pile of messy stones. At this time, Lu Cheng had stabilized his stance. Instead of retreating, he took a step forward and rushed to the enemy's side. Between life and death, the brave one wins. His eyes flashed and his mind was filled with white snow. He flicked his wrists and elbows, aiming at 7 places on Dong Xiaoyang's body. At the same time, the cold light spread out from his shaking fists, creating a fog made of ice crystals that blocked Dong Xiaoyang's vision. The ice crystals kept vibrating, converging into a buzzing sound that interfered with the enemy's hearing. The 13th move of the ice sect, snow cover. In such an environment, Lu Cheng, who had not yet released the strength in his hands, suddenly clamped his tailbone, straightened his legs, and silently kicked out with his right foot towards the enemy's ankle joint. Dong Xiaoyang seemed to have anticipated this. He put his arms in front of him, bulged his thighs, and kicked back fiercely with his left foot. In a flash, Lu Qing suddenly bent his spine forward, lowered his center of gravity, and let his right foot touch the ground in advance. After touching the ground, he forcibly dragged his body to the side of the enemy, creating a perfect opportunity when Dong Xiaoyang kicked out his left foot. This was the application of the 19th move of the ice sect, Cold Swallow. Lu Qing incorporated the technique of this move into snow cover to form a combo attack, which was equivalent to a combination of the two moves. After losing to Peng Liyun, his hard work and attempts were not in vain. This was the result of his hard work. He had reached a higher level and followed his heart without breaking the rules. In his mind, he visualized a frozen river and shaking thunderclouds. Lu Qing was neither happy nor anxious. He raised his right arm high, clenched his fist and punched down. Simplified physical invulnerability move, severe warning. The distance was too close. Dong Xiaoyang's left foot missed. He was suddenly in a precarious situation, losing his previous advantage and falling into an extremely dangerous situation. Facing this, he did not despair or panic. Instead, he gathered all the strength in his body and let the danqi erupt above his spine. Bam! His spine bent like a hard bow, dragging his body to the back. With a bang, he knocked down another load-bearing wall. Lu Qing did not feel depressed when he missed the severe warning. Full of fighting spirit and unusual calmness, he swayed his center of gravity and pounced on the enemy who had not yet fallen to the ground. He spurted out the danqi and shortened most of the distance between them. He was about to catch up. Monk Wenguang carried the sleeping girl and moved to another position with the divine enchanter of Sin Flame. He sighed in a low voice. He really has a talent for fighting. Senior, cover your voice. Don't attract others. Okay. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame nodded slightly. After knocking down the wall, Dong Xiaoyang regained his balance in midair with the help of the force. Looking at Lu Qing, who was closing in on him in a flash, he suddenly hid his eyes, letting them be filled with a terrifying white. He visualized the corresponding picture, shook his chest and abdomen, opened his throat, and exhaled loudly. Bam! The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Lu Qing felt like he was in an empty room in the middle of the night. He heard a knock at the door, and outside the window, there were tombs and the cold wind whistling. In an instant, he was frightened and nervous. His body could not help but tremble, but his willpower was at its strongest. He quickly calmed down and made a gesture to use the 9 words formula. Forward. His voice turned into a sharp arrow, exploding in front of the enemy with his negative feelings. Dong Xiaoyang's eyes were cold. He did not waver and seized the opportunity to close in on Lu Qing. Using force concentration, he expanded his body and used the double explosion move just now. Bam bam bam. Boom boom boom. Lu Qing responded with a series of dance stage outbursts, but he was beaten back by the duet again and again. He broke through one wall after another, shaking the entire 6-story building. Clang! Clang! Dong Xiaoyang did not recklessly attack head-on. He changed his rhythm and direction from time to time, giving Lu Qing no chance to use simplified physical invulnerability moves or dodge. 5, 6, and 7 explosions in a row. Lu Qing seemed to be at an absolute disadvantage. He kept retreating and crashing into walls. His back hurt, but his footwork didn't falter and his stance didn't falter. Relying on the sensing ability of the ice mirror, he always sensed the enemy's attacks in advance and blocked them by the skin of his teeth. Without this kung fu, he felt that he could not withstand more than a few moves from the duet. Bang! Another load-bearing wall collapsed, and the building shook again. Dong Xiaoyang flashed to Lu Qing's left side, pulled back his arm and punched again, repeating the previous moves. But this time he didn't use force concentration. Instead, he visualized the images of flame condensation and infusion explosion. Simplified physical invulnerability move, internal explosion. When the punch hit, the force would explode in the enemy's body. His previous duet frenzied attack was not a feint. It was not an attack specifically designed to numb Lu Qing and conceal the use of this move. In a life-and-death situation, there was no need for so many complicated and long-term plans. There was only a flash of inspiration and the right time, because there were too many variables. Dong Xiaoyang's arm muscles undulated as he threw out a punch. He was expecting Lu Cheng to subconsciously parry his attack like he had done so many times before. If Lu Cheng was aware of it, he could force Lu Cheng to dodge and create an opportunity for him to follow up with a series of attacks. Lu Cheng's heart was like an ice mirror, reflecting the surroundings. He sensed that Dong Xiaoyang did not withdraw his qi, blood, and force at close range. No. He tensed up and his hair stood on end. Grasping the few thoughts that flashed through his mind, he exerted force on his feet and leaped into the air without hesitation. Such a move was the standard way to die in the challenge tournament, unless one had the supernatural ability to fly, or was close to the physical invulnerability state. But in today's environment, Lu Cheng would not fall in a hurry and be unable to change his direction. Crack. He jumped close to the ceiling and stretched out his hands. His 10 fingers clenched into the stone and hung in the air. Then he used force concentration. With his fingers as a fulcrum, he bounced back and jumped backward like a gymnast. His feet kicked towards the ceiling, as if he was going to use the rebound force to attack. Below, Dong Xiaoyang could almost foresee what would happen if he forcibly changed his direction, jumped up, and gave Lu Cheng an internal explosion punch in midair. In that case, Lu Cheng would rebound and change his direction, fall to the ground from another position, and then give him a fatal blow while he was still in midair. The difference between the target is the ceiling, and the target is Lu Cheng determined that he couldn't touch the ceiling, so he had nothing to rely on. As the thought flashed through his mind, Dong Xiaoyang lowered his waist and abdomen, and made a prelude to change his direction by jumping up. He was trying to trick Lu Cheng into pouncing on him while he moved away from his position, and attacked from behind with his elbow. This was not a fake move. It was just that his movement was slow, and he left some leeway. He could still make Lu Cheng's absolute reaction and make a mistake in judgment in a split second. Bang! Lu Cheng stomped his feet with great force, breaking the ceiling and causing the stones to fall. He used the momentum to bounce back, but instead of pouncing on Dong Xiaoyang, he jumped to the window like a fish, as if he wanted to escape from the battlefield. You want to escape? Dong Xiaoyang smiled. His lowered waist and abdomen bounced back, and he straightened his knees to change his direction and pounced on Lu Cheng's back. This is the flaw, you exposed yourself. Lu Cheng had just jumped to the window when he felt the sharp pain in his back and the strong wind behind him. However, he did not panic. Instead, he seemed to be expecting something. He put his hands on the window, leaned his body forward and made a twisting kick behind him. Bam! His tattered shoes flew out, along with the red flame and crystal cold light under his feet. They were shot at Dong Xiaoyang, who was pouncing on him. Dong Xiaoyang hummed. He exerted strength under his feet, and his muscles bulged. He was about to make an explosion in the air, and set off a strong wind, to trigger the attack of ice and fire in advance. Then he would break through with his body. Boom! Just as he was about to make a move, the fireball exploded first. The high temperature spread out and turned the chaotic cold light into a pervasive fog. It blocked his vision and made him feel that his surroundings were blurred. Bam! The fog split open. A fist with bulging blue and black veins, like a weapon that could split the chaos, smashed toward Dong Xiaoyang's head from above. Escape is for a better attack. Lu Cheng's eyes were sharp and his fist was firm. Most of his muscles bulged and became a little taller, as if he was going to sweep away all obstacles in front of him that would ruin his beautiful life. Dong Xiaoyang, who did not have time to make a duet, could only use force concentration to defend himself. He shook his right arm and moved upward. Bam! This was the first time Dong Xiaoyang was forced to retreat in a life-and-death battle. Lu Cheng was not going to let him go. He quickly closed the distance and made consecutive explosions, not giving his opponent a chance to make a duet. Triple explosion, quadruple explosion, quintuple explosion. He integrated the skills of 24 blizzard strikes into it, and fought with Dong Xiaoyang at close range. He punched hard to prevent Dong Xiaoyang from making a weird duet, and using unknown secret skills. Sextuple explosion, septuple explosion, octuple explosion. Lu Cheng became fiercer and fiercer. He used dance stage explosions as if they were free. At this point he also realized that the killer, was weaker than Peng Liyun. He was not close to the inhuman level. In other words, although his opponent was strong, he was not a monster. Bam! 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 Lu Cheng was full of fighting spirit. Sweat steamed from his head and condensed into a cloud of white mist. Bam! Dong Xiaoyang was finally crushed by the ferocious, brutal blizzard. He broke through the bearing wall and fell down. The 6-story building shook more and more violently. In the sound of falling stones, Lu Cheng stepped on the ground and rushed to his opponent, who had just stabilized his center of gravity. In his mind, he visualized the red sun and the frozen river. Boom! The red sun hit the ice river, and both disappeared. Lu Cheng pulled back his arm and threw out a punch. The mutated version of severe warning. Dong Xiaoyang did not panic in this situation. It was as if he had experienced this countless times. He did not have time to jump up, and he knew he could not take it head-on. He simply fell down and rolled. Army! At this moment, Lu Cheng dispersed his force and made a hand gesture. He shouted in an ancient voice. Dong Xiaoyang, who was rolling, was shocked. He felt that he was surrounded by enemies because of his situation. After a short tremble, his strong willpower dispersed the influence. But Lu Cheng took the opportunity to slide closer and kick out his right leg. Bam! 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 Dong Xiaoyang tried his best to block a few moves, but he was kicked out of his stance and flew into the air, crashing into the wall. Bam! The impact caused the building to sway. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Lu Cheng looked calm. He slid forward and was about to break Dong Xiaoyang's neck. At this moment, the shaking building finally reached its limit. Countless stones fell from above, making a dull and horrible sound. Lu Cheng paused for a moment. In order to protect himself, he used force concentration to break through the side wall and jump to the open space outside. Dong Xiaoyang smiled bitterly, his eyes full of disappointment. Boom! Lu Cheng heard a deafening sound as soon as he steadied himself. He saw half of the 6-story building collapse, and then the whole building, burying the terrifying killer inside. He should be dead, right? Lu Cheng did not dare to stay in the smoke for fear of other enemies. Taking advantage of the cover, he climbed over the wall into a nearby neighborhood. He found a secret place to hide and then took out his phone to call Geyser. It was the first time he encountered such a situation. Subconsciously, he asked for help from his master. "Hello, master. Someone just tried to kill me," Lu Cheng said as soon as the call went through. "Who? Cough. Who dares?" Geyser was stunned at first, then became furious. "I don't know either." Lu Cheng was still a little confused. It happened so suddenly that he did not understand what was going on. Who did I offend? He thought, feeling wronged and angry. Are you safe now? Go find Xing if you are not. Now that you are safe, tell me the key points. Geyser calmed down and asked in confusion. Lu Cheng told him what had happened, focusing on the opponent's moves and his own condition. In the end he asked, "Master, do you have any clues?" Geyser was silent for a while before he gritted his teeth and said, "I know what happened. It's okay now. You can go back to sleep. There won't be a next time. Damn it, I'm going to tear down the base and apologize to the simplified physical invulnerability experts of the fire sect. Ahem. Anyway, there won't be a next time. Don't ask about it for now. It won't be good for you." Okay. Lu Cheng was confused and chose to believe his master. It seemed that there was an inside story behind the attack. He walked out of the secluded place and looked at the place where the fight had just happened. The building had collapsed and smoke was everywhere. What was strange about this was that such a big commotion did not wake up the nearby residents. Weird. Lu Cheng frowned. He thought for a while and called Yinjika. "Qing, you're here?" the girl asked happily. "No, I'm in a situation. Can you bring me a pair of pants?" Lu Cheng looked down at his torn jeans and did not know whether to laugh or cry. He was not wearing a martial arts suit because it was not a competition. The tight pants were soon destroyed by the force of the dance stage. Yinjika was confused. After the barbecue, Jiang Fei led the 4 students to the entrance of the alley and planned to drive around. As they walked, the girl in the Korean coat suddenly exclaimed and pointed to the side. "Isn't there a building there?" The plump girl with a round face looked over and saw the ruins inside the wall. She was also confused. Yeah, I saw it too. It was there before the barbecue. Why did it collapse? Why did it collapse? Chapter 356. After realizing this, Dong Xiaoyang's face turned red and his throat made a sound as if it was blocked by old phlegm. His scalp was numb and his teeth were sore. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood, which dyed the pillow in front of him red. With the release of this pent-up qi, he felt a lot more relaxed in his chest and abdomen. The internal injuries caused by Lu Qing earlier were relieved, and his mind became clearer. He deeply felt the arrogance that had inflated him in the past year. I understand. He took a deep breath and said with determination in his eyes, I will find the gap and work hard to improve. He had to admit that Lu Qing did have a talent for fighting. Or rather, he was smarter. When he failed to take advantage of the situation and was forced to compete with endurance, he was doomed to lose. Good. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame nodded slightly. Arrogance is not a word invented out of thin air. When you survive a life and death battle, it is easy to become arrogant. This is an emotion that needs to be resisted for a long time. It is not something that you can solve once and for all after understanding it today. It was rare for him to say so many words in one breath. Then he turned to Monk Wenguang and said, I will take him back. I am afraid Shi Jiangwo will come to us soon. Hearing this, Monk Wenguang was stunned. His face turned pale and he stammered. You didn't tell Senior Shi? You didn't ask for your master's permission to train his disciple? Merciful Buddha, Namo Amitba. I almost swore. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame and Shi Jiangwo were at the same level of physical invulnerability. Neither of them could do anything to the other. But I am only a professional sixth pin. No. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame answered seriously. Shi Jiangwo is a man with a tough mouth but a soft heart. Every time he says he will teach his disciple a lesson, he is just going with the flow. He never takes the initiative to do anything. If he was informed in advance, he would definitely say something like, respect the disciple's wishes. When he mentioned Shi Jiangwo's tough mouth but soft heart, a rare smile appeared on his serious face. Since Senior Shi doesn't agree, there is no need to train Lu Qing. Monk Wenguang thought this task was requested by Shi Jiangwo, or at least informed him, and got his permission. Now that he knew the truth, he almost burst into tears. Warriors who have walked out of life and death battles can't look down on those who have grown up in the challenge tournament. However, this doesn't mean that the challenge tournament can perfectly temper a warrior. Without the pressure of life and death, how can one dig out their greatest potential? How can one improve their willpower? Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame said slowly. But this is someone else's master's matter. What does it have to do with you? What was his problem? Monk Wenguang almost broke the kung fu that he had been practicing for many years. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame glanced at him and explained. Some things have to be planned in advance. The Dragon King and the Warrior Sage do have hopes of advancing further and stepping into the forbidden territory. However, it is only a hope and does not mean that it is 100% certain. For those who have potential and are friendly, of course, we have to train and train them. The more the number, the more possibilities there will be. Otherwise, who will be able to contend with the apostles and SPHYNX cat in the future? Monk Wenguang's expression changed again. He quickly lowered his voice and said, Elder May's health is failing? Beside him, Dong Xiaoyang also held his breath with a dignified expression. There is no such thing as a master in the Forbidden Realm. We just plan ahead. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame waved his hand, grabbed Dong Xiaoyang, opened the door and left. After asking for the address, Yinjika hurriedly changed out of her home clothes and put on her outdoor clothes. She hurriedly ran to another room and rummaged for medicine, gauze, bandages and other things, putting them into a bag. Then she went back to the bedroom, took other bags, and went downstairs to the door. When they were shopping in the afternoon and evening, since she had already told Empress Dowager, she bought 2 sets of clothes, pants, socks, and shoes for Lu Qing. She planned to give her boyfriend a surprise during the morning exercise tomorrow. Otherwise, she would have to carefully take out Father Yan's old pants. After changing her shoes and socks, Yenjika shouted, "Hey! Mom, Dad, Sister Jingjing is looking for me. I will be back soon." In the study, Kai leaned out. "So late. Let me give you a ride." Before he finished his words, he saw the door close and his daughter was out of sight. She is so careless. I don't know what she wants to do. Since his daughter was already a professional ninth pin fighter, Kai was not worried. He just laughed and scolded her. Ji Mingyu left the computer and went to her husband, looking at the door suspiciously. She had never been careless since she was in high school. Well, only when it came to that brat. Yenjika took a taxi to Old Lou's barbecue restaurant. She followed the GPS and entered an old neighborhood. In a dark corner, she saw a familiar figure. Seeing that the lower half of Lu Cheng's trousers were falling apart, including his crotch, the girl quickly turned her head and looked to the side. Somehow, she felt like laughing. She bit her lips and tried to hold back her laughter. She whispered, "You have the style of an artist. A performance artist?" Lu Cheng had calmed down and asked self-deprecatingly. Yenjika pursed her lips and smiled. She moved closer and stuffed a few bags of clothes into Lu Cheng's hands. "It's good that you know. Go change." "Huh? New clothes and pants? This style doesn't look like my father-in-law's. Is there still a shop open at this time?" Lu Cheng looked at the bags. "I bought them for you when I was shopping. Are you touched? Are you surprised?" Seeing Lu Cheng acting normal, Yenjika put down her worries and said in a light tone, "Yes, I am. Surprise." Lu Cheng lowered his head and smiled warmly. Wasn't this scene the reason why he fought so hard in a life-and-death situation? Didn't his strong desire to survive and firm will in dangerous situations come from such details? He turned around and was about to hide behind a tree and change into pants. Yenjika's eyes widened and she exclaimed in a low voice, "You're back." She had thought that what Lu Cheng said was just a superficial wound, so she didn't urge him to deal with it quickly. Who knew that when her boyfriend turned around, what she saw was a bloody mess of flesh and a few deep scratches. Lu Cheng wriggled his muscles and stopped the bleeding, so the wound didn't look so bad. "It's nothing. It'll be fine after a few days of dressing." Lu Cheng comforted her. "Liar. How can you call it a little bruise when it's so deep?" Yenjika was worried and angry. "Find a place to sit down. I'll help you." She wasn't angry at Lu Cheng, but at those bad guys who attacked her boyfriend for no reason. Who would like to be involved in a life-and-death situation? We like to live a stable life. Okay. Lu Cheng didn't hurry to change his pants. He didn't want to be stained with blood. He didn't want to expose this in front of his parents, so that they wouldn't be worried. Under the dim light of the street lamp, Yenjika cleaned the blood on Lu Cheng's back with cotton wool and disinfected it. She threw one piece after another, which made Lu Cheng feel bursts of pain. Even if he was a master, he still felt the pain. However, during this process, looking at the weeds in front of him, the fragments of stones, and the dark yellow glow, listening to the girl's incessant nagging, and experiencing her careful movements, he felt a sweetness in his heart. He felt that the piercing pain was not so obvious, and he felt that the cold wind that was blowing like knives was not so unbearable. After Yenjika tied his torso like a mummy, Lu Cheng hid behind a tree and quickly changed into new clothes. "I can play the pharaoh like this," he joked. Yenjika hummed. "Fortunately, I brought enough gauze and bandages. If you went back like that, people would call the police. That's why you came here, not me." Lu Cheng walked out from behind the tree and laughed. "Humph. Remember to remind me to change your dressing every day. Also, take this bottle of 6 life pills. Take 2 pills 3 times a day. It can help heal your internal injuries. Don't be fooled by the fact that you're fine now. You may have some hidden injuries." Yenjika handed the rest of the things in the bag to him. Listening to her nagging, Lu Cheng's expression was gentle, and his eyes were smiling. After that, Yenjika asked curiously, "Where did you guys fight earlier? Did you win?" A fierce fight between 2 sixth pin fighters would definitely leave obvious traces. Lu Cheng pointed at a spot not far away and said, "Yeah, over there." Yenjika looked over and opened her mouth a little. She said to herself blankly, When I pass by during the day, there should be a building there. After 2 days of changing his dressing, with Lu Cheng's current physical condition, all the wounds had scabbed and faded away, revealing new skin. Yin Zhike was right. He did have some internal injuries, and needed to take medicine for another 3 or 4 days to recover. But this did not affect his usual training, and his face was a little pale because of it. At this time, it was time for the Lu family to go back to their hometown to worship their ancestors. After another discussion, they decided not to stay overnight in Qingfu, and to go back on the same day. It was only an hour-and-a-half trip. As for the old couple, if they wanted to stay in their hometown for a few more days, they would stay with their relatives, who would come to pick them up. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Lu Cheng, who had washed off his tiredness from the morning exercise, boarded a van with his parents and sat in the back with his cousin Lu Yanwei and cousin Ma Shi. In front of them were his second aunt Wang Lily and his parents, while his second uncle Lu Jiqiang sat in the passenger seat. The other car was driven by Lu Cheng's uncle Ma Guiqin, carrying Lu Jixian, Ma Jiala and Lu Debong. It was cold outside the window. Lu Cheng was playing with his mobile phone when he felt the car start, heading for Qingfu County in Lining City. That was his hometown, where he had no sense of belonging. Chapter 357. Outside the car window, Lu Cheng had no intention of appreciating the scenery. He chatted with Yin Zhike on QQ, browsed forums, Weibo and other places, and listened to his parents, second uncle and second aunt from time to time. Occasionally he would add a few words. After that night's battle, he realized that his willpower had made another breakthrough. His ability to control his mind had become stronger, and he was more resistant to negative emotions such as fear, nervousness and fear. Furthermore, he had also improved the application of his own moves and judgment in battle. He had also obtained excellent training. Even so, he still didn't like the surprise attack, but he was not as angry as before. As for the endorsement contract of the martial arts shoes, Wu Qingguei, who was on a business trip, approved the modification in principle. Once he came back, both parties could sign the contract officially and try to finish the process before the new year. In that case, Lu Cheng could receive the endorsement fee of 700,000 yuan after the Spring Festival. While Lu Yanwei was playing games on his mobile phone, and Ma Shi was listening to music with her eyes closed, time flew by. The car got off the highway and entered the county road. After several turns and stops, they entered the boundary of Liangtian village. We're almost there. Lu Cheng's father, Lu Jisheng, reminded his drowsy wife and brother and sister-in-law. We're almost there? Lu Cheng looked out of the car window curiously, looking at the so-called hometown. Lu Yanwei put down his phone and leaned over to look at her. Ma Shi didn't notice him at all. She was still listening to the music with her eyes closed. No one knew if she had fallen asleep. Outside was a Tulane rural road with many 2-story and 3-story houses built on the side. They all had courtyards in front of their houses, and some of them even had cars parked there. They all have cars. Lu Yanwei murmured to himself with a complicated tone. Lu Cheng wanted to laugh. He vaguely understood his cousin's mentality. To him, going back to his hometown to worship ancestors was like a city person going to the countryside. Naturally, he had a sense of superiority. However, he found that the villagers had all bought cars. Even if the brands were not eye-catching, they were still small cars. Lu Yanwei's own family didn't even have one. The countryside is quite rich now. Lu Yanwei's mother, Wang Lily, sighed in a similar tone. Lu Jisheng's father, Lu Jisheng, chuckled. Times are different now. There's a shortage of labor. As long as you're willing to work hard and have a skill, you can earn more than me every month. Plus, you don't have to pay taxes. Well, it's not very stable, so there's no guarantee. That's right. I heard that it costs a lot to hire a worker these days. Not to mention carpentry and masonry, the driver interrupted. But it can't be that every family is a carpenter and can earn so much, right? Lu Cheng's second uncle Lu Jiqiang didn't hide his doubts. That's for sure. But think about it, we're all from the same village. We can all see who has a house and a car. Who would be willing to lower themselves to others? Who would be willing to say that their partner was looked down upon by others? then we have to follow. We have to grit our teeth and live frugally, unless we really have no other choice. The driver had traveled extensively and had seen many similar things. Lu Jiqiang smiled and said, "That's what I said. There's a lot of competition in the countryside." Lu Yanwei retracted his gaze and comforted himself. But Lu Qing could see his disappointment and unwillingness. Lu Cheng's cousin had never been content with the status quo. He was always thinking about starting a business and getting rich quickly. Now that he was stimulated, it was inevitable that he would react. When Lu Yanwei was trying to start a business, Lu Qing had always maintained an attitude of neither opposing nor encouraging him. He didn't want to be blamed by his second uncle and second aunt. As the car continued to move forward, more trees appeared on both sides of the road. The houses were no longer just on both sides of the road. Gradually, the atmosphere of a village began to appear. After a few turns, the Lu family arrived at the newly built ancestral hall, and saw an old man with sparse white hair standing at the door. "Debong, you're early. No traffic jams?" The old man greeted them with a smile, and said to Lu Cheng's grandfather, Lu Debong. Lu Debong said excitedly, "Third brother, why are you here? There's no traffic jams. It's been a smooth journey." Hearing the third brother, Lu Qing roughly knew who the old man was. He was his grandfather's cousin Lu Deguang, his third grandfather. He was the one who called for the revision of the genealogy and the new ancestral hall. If it weren't for Lu Cheng's mother nagging about the money, he wouldn't have remembered this elder. "I'm so excited, Debong. How many years has it been since we last met? You're already half buried in the earth. Every time we see each other, it's rare to see you again." Lu Deguang showed obvious joy. After greeting each other, he pulled Lu Debong into the ancestral hall and nagged, "Later you'll burn incense to the ancestors, worship them, and finish the genealogy. At noon, we'll have a banquet when Jilin comes back. In the afternoon, we'll sweep the tombs on the mountain. Jilin is so busy. You don't need him to come back, do you?" Lu Debong said in surprise. "It's not easy for your fourth uncle to come here. How dare he not come back? When he was a child, you loved him the most. Every time you saw him, you would give him money." Lu Deguang waved his hand and said in high spirits, "And most of his business has been handed over to Ertzi, so he has a lot of free time." Lu Qing quietly followed behind and listened to them, just like Lu Yanwei and Ma Shi. Lu Qing had heard about Jilin from his mother in the car. He was the eldest son of his third grandfather, Lu Deguang. At first, he went to Qingfu County with a few villagers to help people with renovations. Later, he jumped out and started his own business. The more he did, the more successful he became. He had already moved to the city, but Lu Deguang refused to go with him, saying that he didn't want to leave the ancestral house. As for Ertzi, he was Lu Jilin's only son, his cousin. His mother didn't mention his name, but said that he was more successful than his father and had expanded his business to Lening City. "Ertzi hasn't married yet?" Lu Debong asked casually. Lu Deguang said with disappointment, "Not yet. He hasn't even settled on a girlfriend. Every time I talk about him, he just smiles. Don't be fooled by his ability. If he still doesn't find a wife in 2 years, I'll make him kneel in the ancestral hall." The corners of Lu Cheng's mouth twitched when he heard this. Whether to get married, when to get married, whether to have children, and when to have children all depended on one's personal choice. Mixing the ancestors and the ancestral hall was simply full of ancient flavor, just like a painted zombie jumping out of the grave. Fortunately, he didn't care about this. If it was reasonable, he would listen. If it was unreasonable, he wouldn't ask for more. After entering the ancestral hall, they bowed to the ancestors and paid the money. Lu Deguang took out a piece of red paper and asked his father, Lu Jisheng, to write down the family tree here. When the time came, it would be recorded in the family tree. After everything was done, the 7 aunts and 8 aunts also came over. All the relatives sat around the square table and chatted casually. They talked about where their spouse worked, what their child did, whether they had a partner, how was their studies. Lu Jiqiang and Wang Lili were a little embarrassed to talk about these topics. They only said that Lu Yanwei had a girlfriend in a stable job, but it didn't work out. Lu Cheng's mother, Qi Fang, seemed to be on steroids and relived the wonderful feeling when Lu Qing was admitted to university. My Cheng is studying at Songqing University. Don't you know Songqing University? It doesn't matter. Do you know Xing Province University? Songqing University is better than that. My Cheng won the provincial youth tournament. Don't you know the provincial youth tournament? It doesn't matter. Just know that the prize money is hundreds of thousands. Lu Qing couldn't bear the exclamations. He looked at his cousin Lu Yanwei and cousin Ma Shi, who were so embarrassed that they wanted to dig a hole in the ground. He said to Lu Debong, "Grandpa, let's go for a walk. We'll be back soon." As he spoke, he stood up. Lu Yanwei and Ma Shi both breathed a sigh of relief and followed him. After leaving the ancestral hall, they walked along the road and gradually calmed down. They looked around with interest. "This is the first time I've been here." Ma Shi looked at the river not far away and found that there were traces of fish in it. She grew up in the city and became very excited. Lu Yanwei was the same. He found everything new. It's winter and it's not frozen. What's so interesting about it? Lu Qing took a picture and sent it to Ku. His grandparents lived in the countryside and were used to such scenes. While they were talking, they passed by a house and saw a middle-aged man practicing martial arts in the courtyard. The crisp sounds were continuous, and it was extremely powerful. "Don't look. Let's go. It's taboo." Lu Qing patted Lu Yanwei and Ma Shi on the shoulder and reminded them. After a few steps, Lu Yanwei lowered his voice and said, "I think that man is very strong. Chung, who is stronger between you and him?" "How can I show off when you ask so directly?" Lu Qing said with a smile. "He has the strength of professional ninth pin and keeps his qi and blood strong." He didn't directly say that he was stronger, but it was obvious from his rank. "Oh, you have defeated a professional seventh pin fighter. You must be much stronger than him." Lu Yanwei suddenly realized. "Brother, isn't that nonsense?" Ma Shi complained. At this time, they saw a group of children playing on the side of the road in front of them. They were playing with toy swords and inflatable sticks, making a big fuss. They were very excited. Witnessing this scene, Lu Qing couldn't help but reminisce. He smiled and said, "Back then, I had a sword that I made myself. I cut it out of bamboo and made a scabbard for it with a bamboo tube. Every time I pulled it out, I felt like a hero. Unfortunately, it was left at my grandfather's house. I don't know who lost it. I remember. You showed off to me and I asked you to make one for me. But you didn't remember." Lu Yanwei said with a smile. "Hey, that kid is playing methodically." He pointed at the child with the toy sword. "Not bad, right, my son?" A man came up to him and said with a smile. It was the middle-aged man who had been practicing boxing in his yard. He had a square face and a lot of pockmarks on his skin. Lu Qing had already noticed him. He asked with a smile, "Is this a family heirloom?" "Yes. Our ancestors were hunters for generations. This is my youngest son. My eldest son got the certificate of professional ninth pin and is a substitute in the Bat Squad. Have you heard of the Bat Squad?" The middle-aged man said casually. "No." Lu Yanwei and Ma Shi shook their heads. Lu Qing had heard of it, but didn't want to ask. "Haha, are you the Lu family who came back to worship the ancestors today?" The middle-aged man asked. "Yes." Lu Qing nodded calmly. Just then, they heard the roar of a motor and saw a black car coming around the corner. Then it lost control and crashed into the side of the road, crashing into the group of children. The children were scared out of their wits and no one moved. The middle-aged man's hair stood on end, and he rushed to his youngest son without thinking. He wanted to hold him and get away from the danger. As for the others, he didn't have time to care about them. He exerted force on his feet and jumped. When he reached the child, he heard the sound of the engine running faster, and found the black car was already in front of him. Seeing the driver with a red face and panicked eyes, the middle-aged man was angry and sullen. He felt that he couldn't escape. Damn it! This drunkard mistook the accelerator for the brake. Just as he was in despair, he suddenly saw a figure leap past and heard a muffled sound of collision. Bang! Lu Qing retracted and released his Dan force. Using both hands, he managed to lift the front of the car. The back wheels of the black car spun crazily and rubbed against the ground, making a sharp noise and sparks. But it couldn't move forward anymore. Crack. The cement under Lu Cheng's feet cracked and the black car's head caved in. Chapter 358. Bang! Amidst the eerie silence, Lu Cheng saw that the tire had completely stopped spinning. He loosened his grip and let the miserable-looking front of the car fall to the ground. The man in his 30s who was sitting in the driver's seat with a blank look on his face jumped up in fear. Just as Lu Cheng was about to step forward, open the door by force, drag this drunk driver out, and teach him a lesson, several families nearby heard the commotion, rushed out, and asked in confusion, "What's wrong? What's the matter? What happened? What's the situation?" Only then did the frightened children come to their senses. They cried and screamed, making the scene a mess. The middle-aged man surnamed Yu came to his senses and looked at Lu Cheng's back. He swallowed hard and turned his attention back to business. When he turned back, he was so angry that his chest was about to explode. He held the child, straightened up and shouted, "That bastard was drunk and driving and almost hit Junfei and the others. If it weren't for that young man, they would have been dead." With a buzz in his head, the men and women who came over became anxious and rushed to the black car in the midst of the children's cries. F***CK. F***CKU. I'm going to kill you. In the midst of the cursing, they walked past Lu Cheng, opened the car door, and dragged the driver out. They dragged him to the nearby river, beating and kicking him as they dragged. "Ah!" The driver screamed again and again, calling for help. Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. He silently stepped back and pretended that he didn't hear anything. This drunk driver deserved to be beaten to death. The scene when everyone rushed over was so shocking that even he was shocked and didn't take the initiative to punch the driver. Is this the consequence of provoking public anger? Help! The driver was pressed into the cold water, choked a few times, and was lifted up again. He finally sobered up completely and understood his situation. He cried and shouted, "Call the police! Call the police! Call the police!" After being pressed into the river and beaten, they finally calmed down. Among them, the middle-aged man surnamed Yu was the first to come to his senses and stop the villagers from hitting the vital parts of the body. Under such circumstances, there was a reason why the perpetrator was beaten up so severely. The law did not punish the majority, and the police would not pursue the matter. However, if someone really died, there would be a lot of trouble. Seeing the driver curled up in pain, he called the police and then walked over to Lu Cheng. He looked at the black car with a dented head and the tire marks on the ground as if he were looking at a monster. He said with fear and horror, "Thank you, thank you. If it weren't for you, we and the other children would have died here today." "It's nothing," Lu Cheng replied politely. The middle-aged man surnamed Yu was rendered speechless as he recalled the sight of Lu Xian lifting the carriage with both hands. It was really a piece of cake. "Your kung fu is amazing." The middle-aged man with the surname Yu sighed in amazement. In the end, he asked carefully, "Do you want to follow him to the police station?" "Can I not go?" Lu Cheng retorted. It was troublesome to go through the procedures in the past. It delayed his lunch and tomb sweeping. "Yes. We have so many witnesses and people involved. It's enough." The middle-aged man with the surname Yu imitated the tone of a TV series. "Besides, the police won't say much about a martial artist who can directly block a car with his foot on the gas pedal. We can be witnesses. You acted bravely for a just cause. Damn it, that bastard must go to jail. Okay, if you really need me to testify, call me." Lu Cheng gave him his phone number and name. The middle-aged man surnamed Yu finished recording and called back. "I'm Yu Zhong. When I'm done with the police station, I'll come to the ancestral hall of the Lu family to formally thank you." No need, no need. That's enough." Lu Cheng hurriedly waved his hand. Yu Zhong thought for a moment and said, "Then if you want to eat game, call me. As long as it's not a protected animal, I'll definitely get it for you. It's definitely authentic." "Okay." Lu Cheng did not refuse his gratitude again. Watching the three of them go back the way they came, Yu Zhong touched his son's head. He still felt fear in his heart. The image of Lu Cheng stomping on the cement ground and blocking the black car flashed in front of him. Damn it. What was the first thing I wanted to say to him? It seemed like I wanted to say, young man, you don't look very healthy. You need to exercise more. Cough, cough. On the way back to the ancestral hall, Lu Cheng coughed twice, took out the 6 life pills, and hurriedly took 2. Ma Shi, who had been silent since the beginning of the incident, was awakened by the cough. She took a deep look at her cousin and said with a sigh, "Second brother, you're really a human Gundam." Yeah. Lu Yanwei beside her also broke the silence. The battle in the ring often did not let most people directly see the horror of a martial artist, but the previous incident was not the case. Back in the ancestral hall, the conversation was still going on, but the focus had shifted to the younger generation of Lu Cheng's grandfather. Lu Cheng, Lu Yanwei, and Ma Shi found a corner and sat down, listening with great interest. After a while, the news of the car accident outside was passed from person to person, which made everyone curse the drunk driver. Since Yu Zhong went to the police station, people only knew that a young man helped to save people, but did not know who he was or how he saved people, which saved Lu Cheng a lot of trouble. At lunchtime, Lu Jilin, who had been called by many people, drove back to the ancestral hall with his wife. He looked a bit like Lu Cheng's father and second uncle, but even if he wore glasses, he couldn't hide his fierce-looking face and a bit of a gangster's temperament. If he didn't look like this, he wouldn't be able to control others. "Oh, fourth uncle, I've been waiting for you to come back. I've been telling my wife and children that among the elders, you love me the most, even more than my father." Lu Jilin was very enthusiastic, but it was hard to tell whether he was sincere or good at social interaction. Lu Debong was very surprised and touched his old eyes. "You're the first son in our family. Who else would I love if not you?" After Lu Jilin met Lu Jisheng and Lu Cheng, Lu Deguang asked, "Where's Erzi? Didn't he come back?" "Oh, fourth uncle, I'm sorry. Erzi cooperated with others to form the Bat team, which is valued by the city leaders. He has a competition today and can't come back. He asked me to say hello to you." Lu Jilin held Lu Debang's hand and said, "It's okay. Business is more important." Lu Debang did not mind. The Bat team. Lu Cheng smiled and did not say anything. During the banquet, Lu Jilin took care of everything. He did not neglect his peers, but also made Lu Cheng and the other juniors feel valued. When they asked about their studies several times, they showed great admiration for the scholar. After lunch, they rested for a while, and then went to the back mountain with the Lu family to sweep the tombs of their ancestors. They were busy until 4:30 when Lu Cheng's father, Lu Jisheng, said goodbye. After several persuasions, Lu Jilin sent them to the entrance of the village. Lu Debang and his wife did not stay and followed them back. In the speeding car, Lu Cheng recalled what had happened today and found that he only recognized his third grandpa and Uncle Jilin. He had no impression of the other relatives. It was too messy. Alas, I never thought I would be face-blind one day. But this was not important. What was important was that they were going to Qingfu County to eat the famous tofu banquet, where all the dishes were made of tofu. At around 8:00 p.m., a Trident sports car stopped in front of the Lu family's ancestral house in Liangtian village. "Erzi, why are you back so late?" Lu Deguang stood at the door and said with a straight face. The door of the sports car opened, and a man in casual clothes got out. He was less than 30 years old, with thick hair and a round face with ordinary features. "I just finished my work." He shook the key. "Your fourth grandpa and the others left long ago," Lu Deguang said with hatred. Erzi laughed and said, "Well, I'm back to ask Uncle Yu for some game. My friends want to eat." "You." Lu Deguang turned around and went into the house. Lu Jilin laughed and said, "Erzi, you have to take care of your grandpa's feelings. Your fourth grandpa doesn't need to talk to him. What's wrong with your words?" "Yes, yes, yes." Erzi smiled carelessly. He entered the house and saw the red paper on the table. He asked casually, "Fourth grandpa and the others paid the money? Is this the family tree in their area?" "Of course. Your fourth grandpa takes it very seriously." Lu Deguang smoked and answered in a bad mood. Erzi did not say anything. He glanced at the red paper and saw the words Lu Yueqi, written in black ink at the top. Lu Debong. Lu Jisheng. Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng? As he watched, Erzi suddenly raised his head. His eyes widened as he looked at his grandfather and said, "What's the matter? Fourth grandpa and the others are in Xioshan?" Chapter 359. Yeah. Didn't I tell you before? Lu Deguang stared at Erzi. It's been too long. Erzi slapped his forehead in regret. Back then, when his grandfather had mentioned the relatives over there, he hadn't been paying attention at all, and had forgotten about it. After a few seconds he asked, "When did fourth grandpa leave?" "Didn't I tell you? They left long ago." Lu Deguang was a little angry and took a puff of his pipe. Under Lu Jilin's puzzled gaze, Erzi paced back and forth and suddenly said, "Grandpa, give me fourth grandpa's phone number. I'll call to say hello and apologize." When Lu Deguang heard this, he immediately calmed down and smiled again. "That's more like it. Well, the number is..." He was very happy to see that his grandson cared about his relatives. After writing down the number, Erzi dialed it directly. After a while he heard an old and puzzled voice. "Hello. Hello, fourth grandpa. I'm Erzi." He smiled and said his name directly, so as not to be mistaken as a swindler. "Erzi, you're home? Why did you call me?" Lu Debong was pleasantly surprised. Erzi said respectfully, "I was too busy and couldn't make it back in time. Can I apologize to you?" No, business is more important." Lu Debong was a little flattered. "I remember the last time I saw you was when I was in my teens. It's a pity that I missed you. How about this, fourth grandpa? I'll come to visit you during the spring festival. Please leave the door open for me." Erzi said warmly. Okay. Anytime." Lu Debong replied happily. After chatting for a while and asking about fourth grandpa's health, Erzi hung up the phone and looked at his grandfather, who looked satisfied. Then he turned to his father, Lu Jilin, and said, "Dad, let's visit fourth grandpa's family more during the spring festival." He couldn't show too much enthusiasm. The best way was to visit relatives and warm up to them gradually. Not to mention the Wuyue Club of the Ice God sect. A 19-year-old professional sixth pin of the dance stage was already a big shot. Lu Jilin looked at his son in surprise, his face full of confusion. He couldn't understand why his son's attitude would change so quickly. It was as if he was possessed. In the living room of Lu Jiqiang's house, Lu Debong put down his cell phone. Satisfied with being valued by his relatives, he smiled happily. Erzi's not bad. Erzi's not bad. You respect your elders very much." He nagged and started to discuss Erzi enthusiastically with father and mother Lu. Even now Lu Cheng, who was sitting on a chair in the living room, still didn't know Erzi's name. He smiled thoughtfully and continued to chat with his little fairy girl on his phone. "I'm done. You can send me the picture of the tofu feast." Yenjika replied. Today her family's dinner was late because there were relatives coming over. "Sure." Lu Cheng sent the photos of the hydrangea tofu, steamed tofu, crab roe tofu, and braised pork tofu. They are all tofu. There are so many varieties and they look delicious. Yenjika said with a salivating expression. Lu Cheng replied with an evil smile. "But they are missing my favorite tofu." "Rogue." Yenjika replied with an angry expression. "What are you thinking of? I'm talking about that kind of crispy tofu, the kind that can absorb the juices. You put shredded radish in it, soak it in vinegar soy sauce, and take a bite. SKTSK. Am I such a hooligan? What are you thinking about?" Lu Cheng replied with an expression of pushing up his sunglasses. I won't talk to you anymore." Yenjika replied with an emoji. Lu Cheng almost laughed in front of the elders. In order to hide his abnormality, he got up and walked to the balcony. He saw his young cousin Ma Shi looking at the night scenery. Xioshan is developing fast. Lu Cheng glanced out of the window. There were many residential areas nearby, tall buildings and bright lights. "I'm so envious of you now." Ma Shi sighed without answering his question. Her tone was full of sadness. "Why are you so sad at such a young age?" Lu Cheng scolded with a smile. Ma Shi was amused by him. She laughed and said, "Brother, did you not go through puberty? Don't you know that kids at this age are very rebellious and sentimental?" "I wasn't rebellious or sentimental when I was in puberty." Lu Cheng was speechless. He had studied hard in junior high and high school, and his grades had paid off his hard work. Usually he would read novels and play games. He didn't have many friends, but they were all nice people. He had never been rebellious or sentimental. As for his crush on Yenjika, he didn't think he had a chance at all. He just saw it as a pure and beautiful experience. Humanoid Gundam. Mashi couldn't help but complain. She paused and said, "Brother, I'm living on campus now." "Living on campus?" Lu Cheng asked in surprise. "Well, I always stay at home and feel unhappy when I see my parents spoiling Majala. It's better to live on campus. Occasionally my parents call me, and I'm quite happy." Mashi looked out of the window and said in a mature tone that was beyond her age. "That's good. What's close to you?" Lu Cheng wanted to drop a book bag, but he couldn't remember that sentence. "It's not right to use this sentence to describe it," Mashi retorted with a smile. "Brother, your level of knowledge has dropped a lot." "Well, let's not talk about professional knowledge. The third year of high school is the peak of my comprehensive knowledge." Lu Cheng blushed. Seeing that his cousin had thought things through by herself, he was relieved. A few days later, Lu Cheng was alone again. Yenjika's father, his future father-in-law, had started to rest. The Empress Dowager's company also entered a long holiday. The family of three went back to Yenjika's grandfather's house in Junkei County. They would spend the new year there until the third day of the new year. Lu Cheng was a little depressed. He thought that the Yen family would bring the elders and relatives to Xioshan for the new year, but he and Ku would be separated for a few days. The first day of the new year, the second day of the second month of the Gregorian calendar, was his 20th birthday. The depression didn't last long. When Lu Cheng received a call from his master, he was completely relieved. He was told to go to Wuyue on the first day of the new year to burn incense for the ancestors. The first time for a new direct disciple was relatively formal, so it didn't have to be on the first day of the new year. Well, since both sides were busy, this was the only way. Lu Cheng stayed with his grandparents for 2 days. When he came back, it was already the eve of the new year. Before dawn, he continued his training in the biting cold wind. He felt that he had gotten rid of the word weak, of 6th pin. At this time last year, he was just a rookie trying to reach professional 9th pin. After finishing his morning exercise, he jogged outside. Just as he took a few steps, he suddenly stopped. He saw a beautiful girl in white sitting on a bench next to the park. She was looking at him with a smile. Lu Cheng blinked and shouted in surprise, "Ko? Isn't she at her grandfather's house in Junkei County?" Yenjika stood up, pursed her lips and looked to the side. "There's something I forgot to give you." "What's that?" Lu Cheng took 2 quick steps forward and came before the girl. "Here, your birthday present. I asked someone to make a custom-made wallet." Yenjika pretended to be careless and handed a dark blue wallet to her boyfriend. Lu Cheng couldn't hide his smile. While holding the wallet, he also held the girl's hand, which was cold in the wind. "You coming here is the best present. Meet Nam." Yenjika rolled her eyes and scolded him silently. Then she said, "I don't like that wallet of yours for a long time." She used this excuse to hide her intentions. Lu Cheng moved his heat flow to warm her delicate hand. He pulled her to sit down again and recalled the past. "Last year, when you called me to say happy birthday and sang the birthday song, I was so surprised that I wanted to shout from my aunt's balcony. Humph, I mustered up my courage to call you, and you still forced me to sing." Yenjika's eyes were full of sweet annoyance. "Hee, give me an inch and I want a yard." Lu Cheng held the girl's waist and kissed her when no one was around. He expressed his meaning with his actions. After a few minutes of whispering sweet nothings, Yenjika suddenly woke up and said, "I have to go back. I told them I was going to buy something, but I ended up in Xioshan." She had come by the earliest train and had to get back before lunchtime. Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat. "Then, I'll send you back to Junkei." "Okay." Yenjika didn't refuse and nodded in surprise. On New Year's Eve, Lu Cheng, who had just returned from Zhengke County, happily spent the new year at his grandfather's house. From time to time, he put his hand into his pocket and touched the new wallet. Since he was successful, Lu Yanwei didn't make a fuss last year. The family was very comfortable, without any hidden worries, and happily welcomed the new year. When it was almost 12 o'clock, Lu Cheng was about to sneak to the balcony to call Ku when he suddenly felt his phone vibrate. He looked at the screen and saw the name Little Fairy. What a coincidence. I was just about to call you. On the balcony, Lu Cheng leaned against the corner and said happily, "Isn't it because it's almost your birthday?" Yenjika replied proudly. "I was just waiting to say happy birthday to you and then go to bed. Anyway, I'm very flattered." Lu Cheng smiled to express his feelings. Yenjika laughed. After a few words, the firecrackers outside started to sound fiercely, covering all the sounds. Lu Cheng and Yenjika didn't talk, just like last year. Relying on their keen senses, they quietly listened to each other's breathing, which went deep into their hearts. When the crackling sounds died down, Lu Cheng said in a warm and peaceful mood, "Happy New Year. Happy New Year and happy birthday. Happy birthday to you too." "How can I say happy birthday to you?" "Of course you should celebrate my birthday with me." Okay. Can you sing another song today? What do you want to hear? Birthday song? Sing I'm going to marry you tomorrow. No, sing it. Just one sentence, one sentence. Outside the window, fireworks were everywhere. The beginning of a new year was bright and glorious. Chapter 360. It was late at dawn on the first day of the new year. Lu Cheng finished his training and ate the longevity noodles cooked by his mother. Then he carried his luggage and the original proof wine. He walked out of the house in the dark, humming the melody of "You're Going to Marry Me Today." He didn't have time to browse the internet until he got on the train to the airport and replied to Yenjika's message. When he entered the forum, he saw a new post from Lu Cheng's girlfriend. Yenjika posted last night, "Happy New Year to all of you. Sofa, let's have fun together." Brahmin replied with a bouncing emoji. Wonton Seller replied glutinous rice ball. "Good New Year to all of you. I wish myself a smooth college entrance examination and look forward to our reunion in the summer vacation." So annoying. I was squeezed into the sewer while I was eating snacks. Eternal nightfall. Yen Xiaoling knew that Yenjika was going to post, but she still missed it. Well, let's rewind. Happy New Year to all of you. Happy birthday to Lu Cheng. Haha, we can't call him a 19-year-old sixth pin anymore. We have to call him a 20-year-old sixth pin. Unparalleled Dragon King laughed. I'm late, so I won't say Happy New Year to all of you. I wish all of you good health and vigor. May you have a baby soon. Okamoto's fan didn't change his attitude. Looking at everyone's joking and blessings, Lu Cheng's mood was like the sky outside, gradually brightening up as a warm sun rose. No matter where he went, there was always a group of people he didn't know supporting him. This feeling was very, very good. He arrived at Shanggao Airport in Wuyue Province at noon, and saw his senior sister Shi Yuejian in the arrival hall. Shi Yuejian was wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses with no degrees. She waved her hand and said softly but far away, "Why did you bring wine to your master again? I'm afraid he won't let me in if I don't bring wine." Lu Cheng made a joke. Shi Yuejian shook her head helplessly. "You have to watch him and control the amount he drinks." Lu Cheng smiled bitterly. "Senior sister, do you think he'll listen to me? If you nag him more, he will listen to you." Shi Yu laughed and began to teach him the true scripture. That's the kind of attitude he has for his daughter. Will he beat me up if I'm like that? Lu Cheng said self-deprecatingly. Well, sorry to trouble you. Shi Yu smiled, turned around, and led Lu Cheng to the parking lot where her sedan car was parked. Geezer Shi, who was sitting in the back row, poked his head out. His eyes lit up as he said, "Brat, you're getting more and more mature. Come to me." "Dad, don't drink so much. You've been coughing so badly recently." Shi Yuejian nagged. Okay. Just one bite at a time." Geezer Shi rubbed his temples and gave in. After getting in the car, Shi Yuejian pointed to the man in his 30s in the driver's seat and said, "Your brother-in-law, Wu Huikong." "Hello, brother-in-law." Lu Qing greeted him with a smile. His brother-in-law was not a disciple of the Ice God sect. He was a professional manager, but he also practiced martial arts. A few years ago, he finally reached the Dan stage. Currently, he was in charge of part of the Ice God sect's industry on behalf of his master. Wu Huikong was tall and had short hair. He looked smart and gentle. As he started the car, he smiled and said, "Hello, little junior brother. Your senior sister has been talking about you for the past 6 months. She always says that my little junior brother is so powerful and has so much potential. I'm so jealous of you." "I'm not exaggerating," Shi Yuejian protested. "You don't spoil your junior brother with your praises." Geezer Shi agreed with his son-in-law and said, "This brat will become arrogant and complacent if we don't teach him a lesson from time to time." Then he looked at Lu Cheng and said, "I've helped you get the compensation for the previous incident. The internal explosion punch of the fire sect, which is a simplified version of physical invulnerability. I'll give it to you later. I'll also teach you 3 moves of the ice sect this time: North Wind, Polar, and Frost." "Okay." Lu Cheng was invigorated. Geezer Shi glanced at him and said, "I could have asked for more, like the explosive punch. But you don't have a good foundation, so you have to practice carefully. You can't be greedy. My Thunder Roar Zen is famous. How many Dan stage and inhuman experts were killed by it? Look at you now. How long has it been since you used it in a battle? It's because you don't master it well enough." "Yes, master." After being reminded, Lu Qing also felt that he had neglected something in his practice. Although it was not like a monkey moving corn, it was close enough. Shi Yuejian, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was listening quietly. Then she interrupted. "Internal explosion punch? Junior brother, you have to be careful. Try not to use it when you practice. The core moves of the fire sect are known for their violence, which is completely different from our ice sect. Once internal explosion punch is used, the opponent will definitely suffer internal injuries. Even if they are close to the inhuman level, they can't take 3 punches like this. After 3 punches, they will die." Then she smiled and said, "When you reach the inhuman level, you can come and practice with me. The saber techniques of the ice sect are also superb." "What saber practice? Isn't it troublesome to bring them here and there? Isn't it troublesome to destroy them after a few rounds? The most powerful and reliable thing for a martial artist is his own fist and body," Geezer Shi said disdainfully. Lu Qing then remembered his senior sister's nickname, Black and White Magical Saber Shi Yuejian. The 4 of them talked and laughed as the car sped out of the city and onto the winding mountain road. They arrived at the Ice God sect halfway up the Yambing Mountain. Compared to the last time Lu Qing was here, this place was much livelier. Finally, it looked like a big sect. Of course, it would only last for 2 or 3 days. When they walked along the road and entered the sect, all the disciples stood respectfully when they saw Geezer Shi. Some called him Martial Uncle, and some called him Martial Granduncle. Their expressions were full of fear and admiration. The incident of White Heaven and Earth last time had been spread by the elders and disciples with exaggerated details. Geezer Shi had really become an immortal in the hearts of most of the juniors. Ahem. Geezer Shi cleared his throat and walked more arrogantly. It seemed that he was enjoying this kind of treatment very much. Lu Qing held back his laughter and didn't say anything. The older his master was, the more similar his mentality was to his juniors. They walked all the way to the Ice God Palace. Sect leader He had been waiting for them with a group of elders and direct disciples. "Hello, Martial Granduncle." "Hello, 7th Martial Uncle." "Hello, young Martial Uncle." In the greetings, Zhu Tai, Lei Feng, and the others no longer called Lu Qing reluctantly. After Lu Qing followed his master to worship the ancestral master, burned incense, and went to the Xiefeng Palace with everyone to take a seat, Mo Jingting, who was dressed very plainly, came to him and whispered, "After watching the fight between you and Peng Liyun, senior brother Zhu and junior brother Lei are convinced by you." When they met recently, the focus of their discussion was the National University Martial Arts Competition in April. They were talking about Peng Liyun from Shangqing, Renli from Kongtong, and Chaoyang and Zhen Huanqing from Shanghai, and you young martial uncle from Wuyue Club and Ice God Sect. Who will take the lead? I'm looking forward to it. 5 geniuses of 6th pin under the age of 22, and maybe even inhuman. This is probably the most anticipated competition besides the top professional competitions and the 5 major title competitions. After hearing Mo Jingting's words, Lu Qing was also looking forward to it. He even felt his blood boiling. In April, he would fight with Peng Liyun, Ren Li and Chaoyang, Zhen Huanqing, and Li Xiaoyuan, who represented different big forces, to fight for the only championship. They even bet a lot of money on it. Mo Jingting added. It sounds like you're in it too? Lu Qing didn't ask who they favored. If it were him, he would also bet on Peng Liyun or Ren Li. How dare I? Young martial uncle, you Peng Liyun and Ren Li are all monsters. How can a normal person like me tell the difference between monsters? Mo Jingting chuckled. But I still bet 100,000 yuan on you, young martial uncle. After all, we're on the side of reason. It's not right to help people. It's not right to say that I can't win. Lu Qing laughed. Mo Jingting was speechless for a moment. After a while, she smiled sweetly. Young martial uncle, you're so humorous. Why didn't you talk to me like this before? Well, you sincerely treat me as your young martial uncle. Of course I'm humorous. Lu Qing put his hands in his pockets and smiled leisurely. Mo Jingting was silent for a while. Then she sighed. Young martial uncle, are you really only 19 years old? I'm 20. Thank you. While speaking, Lu Cheng's mind had drifted to April, to the National University Martial Arts Competition. Who will be the hero when they are young? While yearning and looking forward to it, Lu Qing didn't forget that his foundation was not solid enough. If he wanted to compete with Peng Liyun and the others, he still needed to go a long way. While Lu Qing was worshipping the ancestors in the Ice God sect, the Lu family also welcomed guests. In Lening City, there was a custom of not visiting relatives on the first day of the new year, so Lu Jilin and his son came to Xioshan to visit. Lu Debong was very happy about this. He invited the whole family of his eldest son, Lu Jisheng, and youngest daughter, Lu Jixian, and set up a big table. As soon as Erzi entered the door, he looked left and right, but when the banquet started he still didn't see Lu Cheng. He suddenly had doubts in his heart, so he deliberately changed the topic. Our generation should have the character, Yuan. But many people don't care about this. Yes, you're called Yuanchang and he's Yanwei. Both of you are in the Yuan generation, Lu Debong said with a smile. We don't care about it when it comes to Cheng. In that case, should Cheng be called Lu Yuancheng? Lu Yanwei said with interest. Ma Shi interrupted. No, it's more appropriate to call him Lu Yuanba. This made everyone laugh. Erzi and Lu Yuanchang seized the opportunity and asked, Cheng? He's not here, right? He went to Wuyue to pay a New Year's visit to his master and burn incense for his ancestors. Qi Fang answered proudly. He went to Wuyue. Erzi looked at his father and felt disappointed. After the banquet at noon, Gizershur found Lu Cheng and smiled. Your martial uncle sect leader asked if you want to take a task. What task? Lu Qing asked carefully. Go to Haishi sect, Dinghai sect, and Hanqi sect to pay a New Year's visit on behalf of the Ice God sect. Gizershur smiled kindly. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.